Good morning and welcome to the special meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors for August 21st, 2018. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Are there any public comments at this time on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to closed session. Welcome to the special meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for August 21st, 2018. Can we all rise, if you can, to pledge to the flag? Supervisor Garamendi, will you please lead?
Certainly. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you like to announce out from closed session?
Report of closed session. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you. Moving on to announcements.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Any announcements by board members? Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On Thursday evening at 6:30 at the West Point Community Hall, there will be a town hall to talk about tree mortality and removal of trees, answering any questions citizens might have regarding the right of entry forms. I will also have representatives from the Fire Safe Council as well as local fire departments to talk about fire preparedness. I encourage anyone with questions to attend. It's really important that we get the right of entries returned. And so if you know people who are debating or have questions, please encourage them to come to the meeting and have their questions. And if you don't have questions, please turn in your forms. It's very rare that you get something for nothing. And the state is picking up the tab for removing these trees. So don't miss this opportunity. And make our community safer. Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to advise an event that's going to be taking place on the 22nd of September. You may or may not be aware of a gentleman by the name of Rick Ryan. He's better known as the Walking Man of Murphys. Rick has been recognized as far back as New York and for his efforts in raising funds for veterans by walking Highway 4 all through. My district, District 3 in Calaveras County. September 22nd marks his 10th year of doing this, his 10-year anniversary. I will be requesting a proclamation at that time to recognize his efforts and what he does for this community. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Any staff announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, public comments.
Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Any public comments?
Good morning, Marty Crane. I hadn't planned on coming to a meeting today, but apparently we have something on the agenda that is so urgent that we have to have a special meeting. We generally have, we fought hard to have our fifth Tuesday meetings, which happens 4 times a year. And at the last couple of, or at least the last one, it was so dry and so long because things were piled onto it, including a study session or some type of a, I forget, Brown Act, whatever, or
Mr. Chair.
I forget what it was.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, fine. Never mind. Never mind.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to address maybe a point of order. I believe this topic is covered under the regular... Mr. Chair, I'm speaking to you.
Yes.
I believe that's covered under the item number
No,
4, which we could discuss at that time, Marty.
it's not.
Mr. Chair.
I think, Ms. Supervisor Olivera, none of the items that we have listed there that we're going to be dealing with today have to do with a 5th meeting, if that's what you're talking about.
I'm just talking, it's an
It
overall.
does
general-
deal with the mention of a 5th
Okay,
meeting.
I'm going to rule with Supervisor Olivera,
Okay.
okay?
Fine.
You can make comments on it when that item comes before us. Any other public comments?
Good morning, Joan Wilson, District 1. God, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? Calaveras is a beautiful county, and I am so happy to be here. The smoke is clearing. The temperatures are nice. Who wouldn't want to be here? I'm kind of curious as to what is being done to bring businesses here to this county. I know we all like it to be rural and country-like. And that's wonderful. But you know, it's kind of a blight to see empty buildings standing. There's quite a few in Angels Camp. There's that big hotel that's been empty for years. And now there's a whole block that's empty in Angels Camp. You look at the streets of San Andreas, and it looks more like a ghost town. I love this county. What are we doing? What are we doing to make businesses feel welcome? To come in here and employ our people, and employ our young people. Because we have families that are being devastated because their kids are having to move out of this county. They can't stay here and love the county that they grew up in. What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we taking into account our citizens? Are we taking into account the people that elect the officials to help us run this county? I hope you are very seriously thinking about these things, because you are being watched very, very closely. And the public wants its people that they elect to work for them and to work for their families. We used to have a meeting in the evening for this. Now, I have Tuesdays off, so I can come. But if you are working and you don't have Tuesdays off, and you're probably working out of this county, you don't get a say. You don't get to publicly stand here and talk in front of the entire public and have your say. You can say it privately to your supervisor, but that's about it. Gentlemen, you have a great day. It's beautiful. Enjoy it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janice Bassett, and I just want to let everybody know that we have some wonderful things happening in our county. And, oh God, I'm so sorry. So sorry. And one of them is we have a collaborative formed. and it includes the volunteer center, the brand new volunteer center in San Andreas. I don't know if all you supervisors have seen it, but you really should go. We serve the whole county. And then we also have the Valley Springs Youth and Family Community Center in Valley Springs. And we have the Optimist Club, and most exciting, we have makers. We have a maker space. We have a scientist inventor who wants to bring make to the elementary school classrooms. So to support all these efforts, we only have 2 fundraisers per year. We have the Calaveras Family Showcase it's going to be put on November 3rd. I'm hoping Gary will do the lights and sound again for us. And then we also have the Sweetheart Supper in February. So if you know anybody that likes to perform, and this is an opportunity for any performer to take part, we build the show around whoever shows up. Last year we had a wonderful show. And so we hope this year we'll have more audience. So please come to the show. Here's a little flyer. Can I give you guys a little flyer? This is just about the, we're going to have people come and show us what they want to do in the show, and these are the dates and times and locations for that. So, thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Chris Jonkles, District 2. Came up last week to do some work on my property, and I got some really good service at Big John's. There was no line. I didn't have to restart my truck to get into the pump. I walked right inside and paid and walked right out. Then I went over to Sender's and got my sandwich in about 5 minutes. There was no line. There's probably 3 people waiting to wait on me there. I went to the checkout line. There was no line, so my time at Sender's was brief. I went over to the hardware store. The 4 people working there were more than willing to wait on me, as there was no line there either. So after I did this, I went up to my property and started some cleanup. And on the positive sign, I never thought my property would be habitable again after the fire. The views were destroyed. And as we started cleaning around the road, I noticed that I can actually see all of my neighbor's forest from my property. And once I cut down all of my dead brush, we've dubbed it the infinity forest, because where my cut drops off now, all I see is green. So I was encouraged by that. I'm going back up today to continue that work. I think CAL FIRE would be happy with me now, which I thought was important as well. It's given me some hope that my property can continue to be restored from where I found it when I came up 3 years ago. It's a beautiful day in Calaveras. It's going to be a little bit cooler today. I hope this meeting can be dealt with respect. I hope that my ability to come and speak and be respected will be maintained, as I respect everybody who speaks as well. And I hope we can have a positive meeting today. Have a good day.
Good morning, folks. Bonnie Newman from Double Springs, the first county seat of Calaveras. I've had a number of requests to talk about Tales from Double Springs, but so many issues come up, but I don't have time, and 3 minutes is not enough to tell you the stories that I've heard about our history here in Calaveras County. Last week, a woman spoke about speed limits. We noticed that the speed limits have been changed coming into San Andreas. Who determines when the speed limit can be increased? Because to me, it doesn't make sense to increase speed into a town. I've seen a pattern by Caltrans, and it's happened all the little cities between here and Stockton that I go through. Caltrans will increase the speed limit by 5 miles an hour, then 10 miles an hour, and pretty soon there'll be enough accidents to warrant a signal. Okay, is that how we're handling traffic? Is making people drive fast enough so that someone gets hurt and then we have to put in a signal? I like the treatment in Valley Springs, the roundabout. I heard that was kind of an idea of yours, Gary, to do a roundabout rather than a signal. I think that's more appropriate for our rural area. Someone's going to get hurt down there at the end of town or in here. There's not enough crosswalks, and the speed They don't slow down. Now that they can go 50 miles an hour to the end of town, they drive 40 all the way through town. Someone needs to rein Caltrans back in. Then I want to talk about speeders on double springs. Okay, we got people trying to beat the traffic on the highway by roaring down double springs 60, 70 miles an hour. I used to worry about the little old ladies that walked on double springs. I sewed them red corduroy jackets so they'd stand out. Well, now I'm the little old lady because those guys are all gone. I'm the little old lady that's going to get hit going out 6:30 in the morning to get my newspaper and having somebody drive by and give me the high sign because maybe I'm on the side of the road. I mean, I really don't understand. Double Springs isn't a Caltrans road. Is there a way that the county can impose traffic moratoriums or something to that effect so that not just me, but my animals and other people's animals don't get hit on Double Springs? There's no need for people to drive that fast. Thanks, folks. Have a nice day. See you next week.
Good morning, Beth Whitkey, District 5. Last week I was talking about how some members of the board identify as Republican, and at the same time they direct county staff to bring things like 8.06 up to justify or keep the government large. The extra county code hires were hired as part of the Cannabis Urgency Ordinance Program. We all said that if you cut the program, if you banned, there would be job losses at the county. And this is a way to keep the county staff bloated. The way to fund the ban is to go after regular citizens for things like shipping containers. I think we need to switch course. I think we need to go back at looking at regulation. I am very upset that 3 board members canceled out Measure C. I understand there's recent litigation saying that it wasn't properly, that it wasn't legal for you to collect the money. I don't know about that. I do know that thousands of illegal growers were not taxed, and that's wrong, that it was selectively enforced only on the registrants. And I think that needs to be addressed. And if you can't address it amongst yourselves, then I think there needs to be more litigation. I wish that we could sit down and come up with a regulatory program that everyone can live with. I don't want to see county jobs lost, but I also don't want to see people who are trying to improve their properties or store their things be fined and taxed in a roundabout way. I continue to struggle with people in my vicinity who do not follow code. It should not be on me to report people, to follow up. As I've said before, emergency services will not be able to find my farm because of neighbors obstructing my road. I would like to see the county embrace small business as opposed to large corporate developers. I'm talking to you, Supervisor Mills. I don't like what's happening in the newspaper. It seems like they're just covering everything, all the good news in District 4, and very, very little is being covered in the bad news in District 2. That district is dying. And it's on the board members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good morning, Terry McBride. Apologize for the sunglasses, but sure as heck my eye got cut last night and the lights hurt. So I'll look at you in the eye because I think everybody should be able to look somebody in the eye when they're talking to them. I already told you what's happening to our businesses. I already took just a little survey of folks, and then I talked to other people, and so many businesses are closing, so many people are losing their jobs, so many good and decent people are leaving Calaveras County, and I have to wonder, is that what you and you and you, Gary Toffanelli, want? I want you to know that most of us are going to stand our ground. I don't walk away, I stand my ground, and I'm going to stand it against you 5, and I guarantee you, everybody I went to Calaveras High with that still live in this county, that still care and love this county and actually give a damn, yes, give a damn, unlike you, and you, are going to fight you. That's all there is to it. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good morning, Cliff Edson. I'm still a businessman in the county for 3 weeks, and then I'm not. Thank you. Thank you for that. We were there for 14 years. Plan to retire here. And now we can't retire. Okay? But that shouldn't affect you guys too much because it just kind of follows suit with your history on what you did. And now you're bringing it to us, making us do the same thing that you did in your failing financial history. Traffic. Caltrans moved the traffic signs. We've had one accident already. They moved the 40 mile an hour or 30 mile an hour sign right in front of my restaurant, actually. Coming down the hill, right in front of my restaurant. That's where it turns into 30. And I'll tell you right now, they aren't doing 40 and they aren't doing 30. So I hope that folks will treat the new business owners that have purchased our business a little bit better, or at least the county. We get treated very well from most people that come in there, but our customers are wonderful. But the county has just, cut us down to nothing. Really, about 40% loss on our business because of your ban. Now, on the brighter side, Pioneer Days will be in San Andreas on September 8th. So we can celebrate some real industry in real days. So it'll be at Turner Park, and I hope that as many people can come there as possible to celebrate our history. And me belonging to San Andreas Rotary Club, we had our Wine, Cheese, and Olive Festival, and it was very successful. And we were able to give Meals on Wheels a $5,000 check. That's, people that take care of the elderly. And much needed money went to them because there are so many people out there, so many seniors out there that just can't get out and live a good, healthy life as far as nutrition. So thank you for Meals on Wheels. That's it. Thanks.
Any other public comments? Any other public comments?
I feel that pot has impacted our county, our state, our country, this world in a very negative way. And it is not the only drug that affects us, but I'm very disturbed about the future of our country, and I'm concerned that other entities may just walk in and take us over because of it, and whatever freedoms that we have will be taken away. And I'm resigned to what reality might bring, but I do not accept it. And I guess that makes me kind of a crazy person.
Any other public comments?
Hi. So yesterday I heard a news story on the radio about Orange County. And you see, Orange County is working to stop election hacking. In fact, the United States federal government has classified United States state and local election systems as critical infrastructure on the same level as nuclear reactors. That is just how critical our election infrastructure is to maintaining a safe, maintaining a fair democracy. And you see, my question today is, what is Calaveras County doing to maintain its election infrastructure? What is Calaveras County doing to keep its election infrastructure safe, secure? Because this November, we're embarking on what is essentially a nuclear reactor. And so, is our nuclear reactor going to be safe? Is it going to help maintain the power of this county? Or Is it going to blow up? Is it going to melt down? Is it going to be hacked? Earlier today, the New York Times released a story about how Russia, their intelligence agency, is targeting conservative groups in cyber attacks to help to change the election, to get certain people elected and to remove some people from office. Now, we think of this as on the level of Congress, the presidency, the Senate. But the thing is that local elections are perhaps even more vulnerable. The core of the government isn't in Washington. The core of the government is just down the street, in this very room. The most important part of government is the government that I'm standing in front of, our most local representatives. What are you five doing to protect the result, to keep trust in not just the entire American system, but in the system that happens in this very room? So I urge all of you to look into what election systems you have, what machines are vulnerable, what's connected to the internet. Because if it's connected to the internet, I guarantee you may not know about it today, but there is a vulnerability. Someone will find it, and we can only hope that the person that does find it is responsible and discloses it. But chances are it's going to be somebody at least on par with the Russians, if not worse. Do we want the terrorists, the communists, the other evil people to attack our elections, our democratic process? No.
Any other public comments?
Good morning. I wasn't going to comment, but just to follow up on that briefly, our county website, as you, I believe, all know, has been hacked, and this has supposedly been attributed to ISIS, and as a result, it's become harder for the public to use, and documents that I used to be able to find and reference to inform my comments here and elsewhere aren't so accessible. And that's all, just to validate the young man's concerns. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Does any board member wish to remove this item?
Mr. Chair, number 2.
The only item on it. All right. Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions real quick. I understand that this is a $500,000 grant for hiring people in the assessor's office. The history on our board packet indicates that we participated in this program approximately 4 years ago. We did so 3 years ago, but we did not participate last year. My question to our assessor would be, why did we not participate last year? Pros and cons of that. And number 2, the matching of $250,000 to receive a $500,000 grant. And it indicates in our board packet that's to hire 2 positions. I need to know the open positions in the assessor's office prior to this grant, should we be awarded it, and how would that increase and the duties required to justify those positions? Good morning.
Mr. Chair,
Thank
honorable
you.
members of the board, Mr. Oliveira, the answer to your question is, first, you are perhaps reading this wrong. Although it does say financing up to $250,000 matching funds will come from the general fund, that is assuming the full $750,000 is requested. This resolution was written with a not to exceed $500,000. You would divide that number by 3. As of this moment in time, I'm expecting to actually apply for about $300,000, not $500,000. but we really will not know until I work it out, talking to admin in my budget meeting later this week. So the resolution was written authorizing a not to exceed $500,000. Your total cost would be about $180,000 at that point. I'm just trying to do the math in my head, so if someone has a calculator and can divide 500 by 3, that's a more accurate number. You're going to have to ask your other question again if I screw up the response, but I think that again, perhaps there's some misunderstanding about what we have and have not filed for. The concept of a grant assisting state or county assessors' offices has been around since the early 1990s. The first program was a loan program where Calaveras was eligible for $109,000 and some change. It was like $109,987 if I recall properly. Calaveras County did apply for that. They got that amount every year and was able to prove repayment of the loan through the work that the new staff was able to accomplish. The second program was a grant program, another $109,987 or so. Calaveras County applied for that until it was ended by the governor in about 2002 or 2003. The state went for several years after that without providing any assistance to county assessors' offices, and then they did a third program that was intended to be a pilot program. It was restricted to 10 counties across the state, 3 small counties, 3 medium counties, and 3 large counties. And then there was a wild card, if you will. We chose not to compete for that because the way that was written and the constraints that were put on it were not something that I could, in good faith, sign on the bottom line and say we would do. It required guaranteed increases to the assessment roll. I neither guarantee an increase nor do I guarantee a decrease. It really matters on what's happening in the market in Calaveras County, and as Supervisor Toffanelli knows, I've certainly gotten some heat over the years when I've found that reductions were in order to the county's dismay. So this particular grant is written different, doesn't require guaranteed increases, requires an estimate of what we may increase or decrease. I am proposing 2 new positions, an advanced level appraiser position, because we are experiencing problems with appraising complex properties in the county, and an assessment technician to help process some of that workload. And I'm also proposing, in consultation with admin, a project to scan the files in my office. As you may know, we have about 50,000 property files in our department. When the Butte fire came within a half a mile of Government Center 3 years ago, it became increasingly clear that the very foundation of the assessment role is at risk if there is a fire in that building. So in the initial year, my hope is to pay for a project to scan those files so that we will have the electronic versions of those files. And then in the second and third year, I'm hoping potentially to bring on another person. However, it will depend on how well we are moving through our backlog and how well we are actually proving that new people are helping with the work that needs to get done. As this board knows, I've been reluctant in the past to ask for money for new staff without a reason to actually use that new staff. Nothing's changed. It's really a matter of what we can do and where we can go with the extra funding from this state.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. What is your backlog right now?
I do not know. The last time you asked me, I said it was about 6,000. I believe it to be relatively unchanged. Over time, we've gotten some work done, but more work has come in.
Okay. I've noticed that there is advertisement on the county website for positions in your department. Are you filled to maximum FTEs or in part-time, or are you still trying to fill those vacancies?
I have 1 vacancy for an assessment technician who resigned in June.
Okay. So any proceeds from this grant should be awarded this grant. And you indicated somewhere around $300,000 requested?
That's what I expect at this point. We're going to fine-tune it as I continue the application process.
Okay, and is there a possibility of a $150,000 match if we get the awarded the full $300,000? Is that correct?
No, if we get $300,000, the board will be asked to match $100,000.
$100,000.
The match is $1 for every $2 we get from the state.
That's the formula. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Davis. All right.
Any other board questions? Any public comments, questions?
Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Now, I'm trying to put all of the things I've always been hearing together, and if I'm off base, I'll be corrected. But is the assessor's office the entity that has been receiving state acclamation for a number of years for their progress or their success or the work that they do? In my mind, I'm thinking it's the assessor's office that has received certificates or some kind of awards. If that's so, I'd like to know.
Would that were so. However, those state acclamations, as Bonnie said, it have been going to the auditor's office. Our office, however, has been certified by the Board of Equalization. When they do their survey every 4 to 5 years, they have found that we are within 95% compliance, and that is a key point for assessors' offices, because without that finding, you will not get supplemental assessment administration money. So we are well within the margins that the State Board of Equalization expects. But I'm afraid all those awards have been going to the auditor.
Any other public comments, questions? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
So moved, Chair.
Motion by Supervisor Mills. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. Any further conversation? No? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to the regular agenda, but it's 10 o'clock. Madam Clerk, will we take a 10-minute break? We will take 10 minutes. All right, we're back from break. Madam Clerk, regular agenda item number 3.
Item 3 is from the Board of Supervisors to adopt the revisions to the 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting calendar. So what we have before you today is just a modification of the calendar that was adopted in January of 2018. At that time, the board had approved a third Tuesday meeting, January through June, to hear cannabis items, lengthy items from the planning department, items that needed to be heard in a timely manner that did not fit within the criteria of the second and fourth Tuesdays. Since that time, there's been some discussion about opening up the third Tuesday meetings for all departments to be able to schedule items. And so what this item is doing is proposing that the board add third Tuesdays for September, October, November, and December as part of their calendar, so that we don't have that 24-hour special meeting posting and notification requirement. What we're looking for is to make it available for all departments and have that posting and noticing requirement that we have for other regular meetings. And then keeping in mind that even if we add these dates to the calendar, that if there aren't any items for that day, that we would be canceling that meeting. Do you have any questions?
Any board questions? Supervisor Oliveira?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Would these meetings include any night meetings, or these are just regular scheduled meetings during our daytime hours for the board?
These are regular meetings, just like we have been having this year on the third Tuesday. They would be during the day. If you'll remember that in January, when the board adopted their calendar for the year, we had removed the night meetings because of the lack of participation that we were experiencing.
Okay. And of course, there would be a priority system as we incorporate now for those items that can be heard on normal scheduled meetings. So we won't be coming in for one or two items. It would be more than those items, correct?
These would be treated just as the second and fourth Tuesdays are currently.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one of the dates that we put on the new calendar is the 27th. Normally, that's the week of the CSAC conference.
No, it's not.
The 27th of November.
It is. It's on our January calendar. Last year, we did not have staff nor supervisors,
right.
And we canceled that meeting. This year, we're not as we have more staff in the clerk's office who would be able to clerk a meeting, and we weren't sure of the participation from other departments and or the board, and so we scheduled that. It could always be one that was canceled if there was not items nor board members or staff.
Well, I certainly understand, and I know you've got a official position with your state organization this year.
Right.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And you know, last year we got to this and we transferred that meeting on the 27th, what would be the 27th, 28th, to the first week in December. We could just do, since we're doing the calendar and approving it now, would there be any interest on behalf of the board on just doing that now? Or do you want to deal with it when we get closer? It's not that far out.
It's not that far out. I would say that's up to your discretion. We put it there as it was a regularly scheduled meeting, knowing that if we had some reason that we needed to change that date, we could always do that as it approached.
Thank you. And then on the 20th, that's the special meeting. That's Thanksgiving week.
It is.
A lot of people like to blow out of town.
Absolutely.
So maybe we should consider that as well. It's easier to do this up front so we all have clear calendars.
It is.
So I would propose to the chair that we see whether that's of interest.
Let's hear the other comments first. Supervisor Mills?
Thank you, Chair. I think also we need to be cognizant of staff and staff time and resources, that if we're going to be conducting meetings that will run until 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it would be better to be able to split those up into more days of meetings rather than one big, large meeting.
Right.
We still have the ability for the additional Tuesday in each month, and I know we have been using those in the last 2 months. We're scheduling one again, trying to schedule one for coming up in September. So I would just want to be sure that we don't put staff into 12 or 14-hour days with agendas. I would rather see us hold more meetings that are smaller in size and allowing for a better discussion overall on each agenda item, rather than trying to cram a lot of information into one meeting. I do recall the 1,600-page meeting, and believe me, that was a difficult read. But that's the thing too, that takes a lot of staff time to put that together. So having more meetings that are shorter in nature, even if we commit ourselves to 3 meetings a month and we find that 4 meetings a month is needed to be able to meet that goal, I would be more in favor of doing that than just simply adding meetings for the sake of adding meetings.
So Supervisor Mills, just to piggyback onto that comment, several years ago when we reduced the number of meetings from 4 meetings to 2 meetings per month, one of the reasoning behind it was that we were finding that our meetings were getting shorter and shorter. We were here for about an hour. The board was, meeting to discuss 1 or 2 or 3 items, and then that was it. And so it was an effort, reducing to the 2 meetings per month was an effort to not have meetings that were pretty light where people were only here for a short amount of time. Since that time, we seem to have more business than we did at that time. We seem to have more agenda items. We seem to have lengthier discussions, as you say. And so it's always been the clerk's office hope that we would be able to address the need as we moved forward. And if it's adding additional regular meetings that any department can put items onto, we wanted to facilitate that.
And again, too, is that there needs to be some thresholds. If you find that you're only dealing with 1 or 2 agenda items, then cancel the meeting and bring it forward. But the concept of special meetings or consistent special meetings doesn't really make sense. I would rather see them as agendized regular meetings that have the ability to be canceled in the future rather than create a lot of special meetings.
Any other board comments this time? No? Open up for public comments?
I'm going to try this one more time. If we care, if we really care about bringing the young people, the future generation, it's their generation, it is their government right now. They just haven't taken the seats up here yet, right? If we really care about bringing them in, we will leave the Tuesday night 4 times a year. It's only 4 times a year. And we will reach out to the schools, literally make an effort to go to the civics classes, to talk to the superintendents, to say, hey, let's get them involved in deciding what we're going to talk about at those Tuesday night meetings. And this thing that's coming up, and no, it's not a point of order, this thing that's coming up in the agenda about the board process would be an excellent subject for a Tuesday night meeting to fill the room with our young people. But we just talk about it like, oh yes, we want our young people. We're all old, you know, we got to bring them in. Every meeting I go to, we go, look at all the people in this room. We all have the same color hair as me. Where are the young people? Well, this is an opportunity, and this is a lot of reason why we added the 4th Tuesday, which only happens 4 times a year. That's a lot of the reason why we did that. And I recall, after having gone to all these meetings since about 2001, 2002, part of the reason I agree with you about the declining agenda items as to why we went to 2 meetings instead of 4 meetings a month. It was also, it was a budget thing. They were talking about the cost to staff. Let's do 2 meetings instead of 4. And that was a big part of it. So again, I'm just totally dismayed that we only say, bring on our kids, let's educate the kids, let's bring them into the process, and then we do nothing. We don't take the first step, the second step. The first step was have a night meeting, and we used to fill the room. But if you don't reach out to them and tell them what's going on and say, hey, we want your input and help us make this something that will work for you, then it's going to be an empty room again. So I'm done.
Yeah, I too was here a couple of years ago when you cut back the meetings, and the main thing I remember, it was supposed to save $34,000 each meeting that was suspended. We're going to save the county $34,000. To me, it's censorship. To me, it's an attempt to keep the public from being able to express how they feel. We'll talk about that in the next agenda item, but I looked up suppression. I've defined it before, but I'm going to redefine it. It means to put down by force, to subdue, to quell, to crush, to abolish by authority, to keep from being known or published, to stop a natural flow, or to eliminate or weaken ideas, speech, and action. I was dismayed when we cut back the meetings, and I'm dismayed to hear that the night meetings aren't going to be continued, although I didn't attend them. I had plenty to do in the evenings, like sleep. But my final statement is free speech, free press, free choice. When we start eliminating those freedoms, we're no longer a free America. We become a silent, ineffective, and inefficient nation. Thank you.
Hello again, Terry McBride, District 2. The reason you keep seeing the same people here is because most people have jobs. And they can't be here during the day, so they can't speak. Hopefully they send you emails, but whether you read them, some of you, I don't think you do. So evening meetings are rather important. I think it's really rather sad it's only once every 3 or 4 months. That's pathetic. You want the input of your citizenry that voted you in. You know, the deplorables. You actually want to listen to us. So you need to keep some evening meetings. I know it's a pain for you, but that's life, because people want to be a part of it. But when I speak to them, they're like, I have to work. Almost everybody that I know, or they own a business, you know, because business is so slow right now, they don't dare leave. So evening meetings are pretty doggone important. You're all supposed to have your own jobs anyway. Many of you, some of you may be retired, I don't honestly know. But a couple of the evening meetings are important, and let the people of the community know of Calavera so that they can come and participate. Bringing in the young folk is quite important. But how about their parents and their grandparents that pay the property taxes, that help to pay for these amazing people that you keep complaining you don't want the staff to work too hard? How in the hell are you going to pay them? You can't if you're not getting your property taxes. Businesses are going to close, so you won't get property taxes from that. But mostly you need to think about your constituents, and the evenings are good, and you really need to bring those in. Thank you.
Chris John Colts, District 2. Perhaps some of the reason that people quit attending the meetings is they don't feel that their voice is being heard. Now that the issue is resolved temporarily, we see that even the attendance in this meeting has fallen off because the agenda item isn't as hot as it was 2 months ago. When the people don't feel that their voice matters, they're going to find other things that take precedence over the meeting. Having dinner with their family may be a better thing than coming to the meeting if what they say has no meaning. So I think we can see that people don't feel their voices being heard. We're still here. Some of us are still here. And I think that's an important part. And that's a big part of the kids. The kids need to be shown how this is supposed to function. I would be reticent to bring a high school class in here to see this at Chamber today and how we all behave. It would give them the wrong impression of how government is supposed to function and what their place is in going forward in their lives. We need to do better about this. We need to be more positive, and we need to, people who come to speak need to be respected, and their opinion needs to be validated by action and by showing them that they're being heard. It doesn't mean they're always right or that we have to take action on every item that's mentioned, but a lot of it just seems to fall on deaf ears, and finally those people just go away. And maybe that's what you're after, but that's not the way representative government works. Those people should want to come to that meeting and express their opinion, and they should have faith that their opinion will be respected and considered by their representatives. I think if you did that and held the meeting at night, you would see attendance that would surprise you, because the people are there and they want to participate in their government. They just don't feel that their voice has any value, and frankly, that gives them better things to do with their time. I'm here today because I feel it's valuable, and I think it's important that we keep pushing to have open government and transparency, and that everybody's opinion matters. And you 5 gentlemen, your job is to take all of our opinions and craft solutions that work for all of us, not just for small slices of your constituency. Thank you.
Christian Wilson, District 1. In Murphys, California, there is a 17-year-old boy. He is in the troop there, and the Boy Scout troop, and he's working on his Eagle Scout project. Well, one of the things that he noticed is that another requirement for Eagle Scout is to complete the Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge. One of the requirements of that merit badge is to attend a city council or county board of supervisors meeting. Now, if you don't have meetings in the evening or meetings where these young people can attend, then they cannot earn that merit badge because they must physically attend the meeting, take notes, look at the different controversial issues presented in the meeting, and formulate an opinion based on the views expressed. And you see, if they can't attend the meeting, at least without skipping school, without skipping out on the education that they so desperately need in this important portion of their life, then they have to choose. Do they choose to go down the path of hopefully gaining Eagle Scout, or do they choose the path of skipping school? Now, I don't know about any of you, but I don't think that skipping school is a thing that we would expect an Eagle Scout to do, to put their entire future on the line just for one requirement. And so it's not just the responsibility of the board to help the kids in school, to understand the governmental system, but also to help the kids, the young people, the future, to understand what it is we do in this room, why it is that the things that happen in this room are so important. Everyone, like I said previously, thinks about Congress, the Senate, the presidency, but the most important government is the governing that happens here in this room. And so, the question is, do we deny this 17-year-old his ability to earn Eagle Scout just because it's easier to have a meeting in the morning? Or do we help this young man accomplish a life goal that he's worked ever since he was 6 years old to achieve? I'm glad that I'm not in any of your chairs because I don't have to think about this young person's future. But you five do. I hope you take the right decision. Help this young person. Help all young people, not just the ones aiming for Eagle Scout.
Becoming an Eagle Scout, the merit badges are many, and many to choose from to become an Eagle Scout. It is not contingent on attending a public meeting to become one. I think that there are a number of people that think a night meeting is important. I don't know. You know, that's for you guys to decide, and I don't have an opinion about it, but as far as becoming an Eagle Scout, you don't require that particular merit badge to become an Eagle Scout. Thank you.
Joan Wilson, District 1, 15 plus years in Boy Scouts of America. That is what I did. I have seen Eagle Scout after Eagle Scout after Eagle Scout. I have helped those boys become men. I know the requirements for an Eagle Scout. I am the mother of an Eagle Scout, and civic duty is a big part of it. I have Tuesdays off. I am lucky because I get to come and spend it with you guys. Okay? Some of you like, some of you I disagree with. Those people that don't have Tuesdays off, and I'm very lucky, I was kind of concerned about taking a new job because I may not have Tuesdays off, but I got lucky. Before that, I told my boss, because I could, I want Tuesdays off. When I came to this county, I was told, I was warned about the government in this county. And it wasn't good. I'm sorry to say that, because I want this government to be as good as the beautiful land that's here. For those that have to work outside of the county, and they work Monday through Friday, I get to work weekends, by the way. I give up weekends so that I can have Tuesday off and come be with you guys. Okay? I told you I wasn't going away. I'm not going away. I was told that if I couldn't have the business that I had, too bad. Move. We don't want you here. Well, I'm still here. Sorry you don't like me. I like all of you, even if I do disagree with you. But I have Tuesdays off. For all those people that don't have Tuesdays off, that have to work, they have families, they have to support their families, they can't be here, why not an evening? Maybe they don't show up. But why not? Why not make it available to them? I understand you guys have lives and all kinds of things, and by golly, you asked for the job. You ran. You asked for it. This is your duty, to listen to all of us. And please, be the forefront of what freedom is in this country. Don't try and silence us. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
I think night meetings are important as well. I've sat through dozens and dozens of these meetings, and when I'm not here, I'm at home, I'm watching them, and I rewatch them. I've watched them over and over again. I've got the timestamps of who said what when. And what strikes me is often a lot of time is wasted in these meetings, not because of inane public comment, and there's plenty of that, but people don't always seem prepared when they come here. I watched a 45-minute discussion when dispensary ordinance came back up. And Supervisor Mills, you wanted people to look at the tax auditor to look at the books and be able to audit a dispensary's books. It went on for 45 minutes at this point. Eventually, Barbara Sullivan came in and said, it's already written in Measure C. If people on the board had known what was in the ordinance of Measure C, we wouldn't have had a 45-minute discussion about auditing the books of dispensaries. When Barbara Sullivan came in and said it's written in Measure C, Supervisor, then Chairman Oliveira said, thank you. You just saved us an hour and a half of discussions. I submit that we keep the evening board meetings and that everybody, both in the audience and on the board, read, study, learn the ordinances so we don't waste time in here. I've watched heads of departments, public works, come in and give a long presentation, over a half hour, maybe 45 minutes. And people don't want to make a decision, so they kick it down the can, or kick the can down the road. That happens all the time. And they'll say, wait, I have to come back next week? You know, I mean, people are trying to run the county. They shouldn't have to come in and represent because of a reticence to make a decision. I've watched Inside View when the new board was recently seated, and I saw Supervisor Clapp from my district talk about how he really wants to bring retirees here. He doesn't particularly want to support the schools because they take money. So I think it's really important to include the kids in county government and to fund the schools, to engage the whole community, not just the retirees. Also, if you're tired at the end of the day, I suggest exercise and vitamins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cliff Edson. Well, I'm familiar with very long meetings. We had many. And I'll tell you that I never once thought about not it being a burden on me. Because I believe the people have the right to listen to their government, to see what their government is about, and to be heard. So we chose the night meetings as well. And I know that sometimes it's kind of a pain, but one thing I noticed was sometimes staff would have a hard time, and I'm not sure which staff, but staff would have a hard time finding agenda items because they were at night. but they did a good job when we had our night meetings. There was a couple of times when this place was packed with kids. Largely because we made it known publicly that, hey, kids, we're having a night meeting, come on in. Like Marty, I agree with Marty on this one. That's probably the first one. But, she says, well, we aren't really inviting or making it readily available for these kids. Or we're making it available but not really going out and making an effort to invite. And sometimes that's what we have to do. So it's not just the kids, though, but it's also people that are watching our closed circuit TV. There's way more people that watch that than you can imagine. So be happy that you can have as many meetings as you can. I know sometimes it's really rough on staff, but you can manage that. If a meeting becomes too long, then kick it off to another day to finish it up. It's not that big of a deal. Not that hard. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Yeah, on the evening meetings still. I've received a number of phone calls and emails in the last 24 hours right up through to in this meeting from people who wanted to be here because the next agenda item after this one was of great concern to them. Some people were trying to cancel appointments, professional appointments with clients, apparently unable to do so because they're not here. Other people have other reasons and jobs and school and different reasons they're not able to be here. Some people that I know who are sitting here right now had to go to great lengths to clear their daily schedule to be able to be here because the next item is of such great concern to them. And I just want to also encourage the board to consider evening meetings for, these two agenda items would have been great for an evening meeting because people would be more free to be here and maybe contentious issues would be good for evening meetings. And I don't feel the least bit of grief at imposing on the schedules of my elected officials to be here at hours that you might not like. God knows I'm here at all kinds of hours I don't like, in the middle of what would be my otherwise useful day. So I just want to encourage you to reconsider that change to the calendar to promote and foster inclusiveness and more public participation. And that was it. Thank you.
Sue Holper, District 2. I'm one of those people who did some changes in my schedule to be here. I was supposed to be taking notes for the community club in Mountain Ranch, which meets on Tuesdays. Maybe they should be meeting another day, I don't know, but I realize that none of them are ever here on a Tuesday that there's a board meeting. And this means that there are people who are very active in that community and thinking about the well-being of that community who don't come here. They might come to an evening meeting. The broadest input that you can get It's going to help you to make choices that actually serve the community and serve the whole community and bring in creativity that can solve problems that look like they're insolvable when you have this side against this side and they're just shouting at each other, or even sometimes people out here shouting at you. We all could work together, and this county could do beautiful things and be so much more creative about finding solutions that actually work for everybody. It might not be everybody's favorite, but it would be, we would find things that would work for everybody. That's the kind of county I want to live in.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Supervisor Oliveira,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was one of the participants on the prior board that held the night meetings, and we found that the attendance was low. But we also improved our ability to communicate with the community through video, through our sound systems, things of that sort. I realized the need to bring our youth into this process. In fact, I've also been instrumental in arranging a program that's in the very first stages with CAO Lutz of developing an internship program for government through our high schools. I see the need to have our participation from our youth. And to be quite frank, I kind of enjoyed the night meetings. I felt it was more of a situation where we could listen more freely, if you will, as a board member. And we did have great input from the community. Now I have to put on my supervisor hat and saying, at what cost? Well, Mr. Chair, maybe we could take some of those third meetings and make them night meetings. Say, instead of 4, 6. Maybe that might be a solution where we can make everybody at least acceptable to a program like this. We've identified the needs. Let's find a solution. I would propose that. I would propose taking those third meetings that we have during the day and making those night meetings for a trial period, but more than 4. If we're looking in our 2019, I would look to make that at least 6, and that would be my recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other board comments? Supervisor Garamendi? No?
Any comments,
Okay, I have a couple comments. One is getting back to Supervisor Garamendi's ideas of changing meeting dates in November and December. If we cancel the 20th and move the 27th to the 4th of December, I'm open to that. I'm also open to moving the 20th to the 6th of November, so we have at least 2 November meetings. So instead of having the 20th, on the 20th, we move that to November 6th, first Tuesday of November, and we move the 27th to the 4th December, and that will open us up to possibility and see where we're at on the 18th of December. People, vacation-wise, a lot of times people like to get out of town and go to visit relatives for a couple of weeks during that time of the month of December. So their only opportunity during the year to do so. Because it goes on through to the new year. So I would propose, along with Supervisor Garamendi's, moving the 27th to the 4th, the 20th to the 6th of November. As far as night meetings, I will say this. I think we're too far along in the year to do this, but I would like to bring that up, entertain the thought of our calendar in 2019, come January, to scope out dates to do night meetings at that time. And we'd have plenty of time to going into it to generate, to let people know that we're considering night meetings, we're looking at night meetings. We're going to put that on the agenda come January, our first meeting in January, because our calendar will be on at that time. And we could look at picking those dates, specific dates, to move those to nights. That's where I'm at on that. So, Supervisor Mills?
I fully agree with the concept of night meetings. The thing too is to be sure that we do press releases or get the information out in the public in a timely manner. To simply say we're going to hold night meetings and not be able to put out any notifications, I think would be counterproductive. So for next year, for the 2019 sessions, is the best answer, because it will give us time to get the information out to the public that we're going to be doing it that way.
And prepare staff, have time for staff to prepare to start going back into night meetings.
Correct, correct.
So, Mr. Chair, I didn't know if you wanted staff to respond to the public inquiries or not.
If you have something to say, absolutely, Madam Clerk.
Oh, okay.
This reflects on you.
Okay.
It touches us.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that, today's item isn't about removing night meetings. They're already removed from this calendar at this point. So that's not really part of what we're looking for. If we were discussing adding or deleting night meetings, we would be talking about one day between now and the end of the calendar year, which would be October 30th. What we are proposing is that we add 4 more meetings between now and the end of the calendar year. Whether they're held during the day or at night really makes no difference to me. As far as the participation from the youth, I think that everybody has kind of weighed in on that. I don't have anything additional to add. What I do want to add is that, Bonnie, you were right, that we did propose reducing the number of meetings from 4 to 2. Part of that decision was budget-based, because prior to 2011, we had 2 clerks of the board, and they alternated attending meetings and clerking them. In 2011, when I was hired, the choice was made not to hire a second clerk. So the 2 responsibilities did fall on me alone. And so I think that was part of the budgetary ramifications that we considered. I think that if the board chooses to not cancel the meeting of November 20th and have it on November 6th, I'd just like to draw attention to that is Election Day.
Oh, it is.
So that might be difficult. I don't know that we'd get participation from the public, whether it be day or night.
I'm not even sure if we can legally hold a meeting.
I don't know. I know that our office is very busy with the election.
Yeah. Well, that's something to consider. Thank you for that point.
Sure. And as far as moving the meeting of November 27th to December 4th, at this point I don't foresee any issue with doing that either. So as far as the clerk's office is concerned, that's our input.
Well, thank you for that input. Given that, is there a motion to accept the calendar as is, or changes to December 4th, to 6th?
Chair, I make a motion that we move meeting on November 27th to December 4th. Tentatively, follow the direction and bring it to 6th. Although I do have concerns about Election Day as well. But to your point of trying to make sure we've got those 3 meetings in there.
Yeah. At least two meetings in November and at least 2 in December.
So we can move it up there, and then if we decide we can't fill it, we can cancel it.
That's true. So that's your motion?
That's my motion.
The 6th and the 4th, along with the other regular meetings of the 18th of September and the 16th of October.
Chair,
I second that.
I would also note that the 6th would not be a recognized holiday, so there wouldn't be a reason for it to be.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a motion by
Mr. Chair, I have a question on the motion. I have some concern on the meeting scheduled for the 6th of November. There was issues. Council, can we hold a meeting on Election Day? I mean, is that an issue?
I don't believe there's anything that would prevent us from holding a board meeting on Election Day. I know that we have held meetings on Election Day in the past. I can certainly look into that and confirm with the board and with the clerk if there is something that is problematic and we can cancel it.
Would that affect the motion as stated, Mr. Chair?
No. If she finds that we need to cancel it, then we would just cancel it. So.
Okay, I have an understanding.
Okay, so I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi, a second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 4. Do we need to take a break? 5-minute, 10-minute break before we get into this? Let's take a 10-minute break. We are back from break, and we're moving on to item number 4 of the regular agenda. Madam Clerk.
This item is from the Board of Supervisors to adopt the revised board rules of procedure effective immediately. These rules supersede and replace all rules of procedure previously adopted by the Board of Supervisors. Therefore, any resolution previously adopted setting or establishing board procedures is hereby rescinded.
Counselor, would you like to lead on this?
Sure. As the board knows, under the government code, the board can adopt its own rules and procedures for conducting the board meetings. Back in 1989, the board had adopted rules back in 89 that were in place for many years that became outdated. And in 2013, the board started looking at updating those rules. In January of 2014, the board at that time did a comprehensive update to the board rules and procedures, and that is primarily what we have, what has been in place since then. Staff at that point had recommended to the board to regularly look at the board rules and procedures, so we didn't go 20 years without updating or considering modifications to the board rules and procedures based on regular practice or any updates in law. So I am aware that in 2015, the board did do a brief modification. It's my understanding in 2015 that modification to the board rules and procedures had to do with abstention votes. Since then, rather than as the years have continued to go on and we go through board meetings, there are certain things that we find have become more common practice or that need more clarification based on the law, or something that hadn't been considered before when the board rules were originally adopted has become problematic in board meetings. And so staff has worked with the board chair to try to update these rules and propose some of these updates based on practice, based on trying to at least put something in place that hasn't previously been considered, and to better dovetail with the way that the government code reads in certain respects. There are some of the rules, specifically as it relates to Rule 46 in particular, that I am actually recommending the modification based on the language of the government code, and for that rule to better dovetail with the government code section that it applies to. So, and that rule is regarding orderly conduct for the board meetings. The red lines have been provided to the board and to the public in the agenda packet, so you can see the changes. They are fairly minor in comparison to the overhaul that the board did back in 2013, 2014. But if there's any questions that the board may have, staff is here to answer any questions.
Any board questions?
Now, Mr. Chair, I do have a board question.
Yes.
Maybe a couple of them. Council, you mentioned 2015 where we made some minor changes as to abstention voting. Is that referenced in the adoption of January of 2014 that's listed in our board packet? I noticed we had a revision in 2014.
We did have 2014 was the original adoption. And in June 30th, 2015, there was a modification to abstention votes. That is not part of that. I can read what the current rules on abstention votes reads. A board member may abstain from voting on any matter at any time. If an abstention vote is based on a stated conflict of interest, the voting board member shall not be counted as part of a quorum voting on the issue. If an abstention vote is not based on a stated conflict of interest, the voting board member shall be counted as part of the quorum, but the votes shall not count in tallying the vote negatively or positively. An abstention from voting on the merits of any matter shall be announced audibly and shall be recorded only as abstain vote.
Okay. My question is directed at the adoption date of 28 of January 2014, the board rules of procedures. So 2015 was not involved in the 2014 revision, correct? It was after that?
Correct.
Okay. So basically, the board is bound by the revision of January 28, 2014 until now. Is that correct?
Well, the board rules that are currently adopted are the board rules that were adopted in January of 2014, and that's all of the rules. And then there was a minor change just specific to Rule 28 in June of 2015.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, no other changes or revisions were made in 2015.
Thank you. And today's agenda item was brought forth before this board, which I had no knowledge of until receiving my agenda packet by Friday. Who brought that up? Who brought that? Mr. CAO Lutz. Who was the originator of this agendized item?
It is the Board of Supervisors that is the agendized item. The board rules, since this is the board rules and procedures. I know as far as from my office is concerned, many board members over the last couple of years have come and talked to me about concerns as it relates to board rules and procedures. And so I've been keeping note of those requested revisions or concerns as it relates to anything that I have previously advised the board on. And working with the board chair has been requesting that revisions to the existing rules and procedures come forward for the board to discuss, get input, and potentially modify. Because as I previously stated in 2014 and 2015, it has historically been a recommendation from staff to regularly or more regularly look at the board rules and procedures so that they stay current. This is a living document, and before 2014, the board rules and procedures didn't change for quite a few years, and it was not something that was looked at or considered or updated. And so to prevent that from happening again, staff recommended that staff, the board, the public have more frequent eyes on these things and change them as needed, since it is a living document.
Okay. So that's the history of why we're hearing this agendized item today.
And that was also partly why I know that there has been some frustration and some comments made about this being a special meeting and about notice. As the board knows, notice is required 24 hours in advance for special meetings. But we made it a point to ensure that all of the requirements for a regular board meeting was done in this situation so that the public and the board had at least 72 hours advance notice of the agenda, of the items, and of the rules. And so that's why it was, the agenda was posted on Friday.
Okay, thank you, Council.
Mm-hmm.
Any other board questions, comments? If not, we'll open it to the public comments.
Good morning. It's morning still, right? Good morning, board, chair, staff. My name is Jack Norton from District 1, and I'm commenting today on behalf of the Calaveras Planning Coalition. I'd like to ask, what is the urgency that justifies putting this matter on the agenda of a special meeting? Why can't such an important issue with constitutional implications be a subject of a notice public hearing at a regular meeting? The agenda item indicates that this matter does not require public notice or public hearing. If, as it's stated in the staff report, all persons are welcome and encouraged to attend and to participate in meetings of the board, and as stated in the board procedures, staff and the public are also encouraged to engage in respectful dialogue, then why is this matter being acted upon at a special meeting with minimal public notice? What circumstances have changed since the 2014 amendments that have triggered the proposed changes to the board procedures? The proposed procedures deal with the amount of time a speaker can address an issue on the agenda in Rule 20 and 21, the number of times a person may speak to an issue, Rule 21, the manner in which people can submit exhibits to the board, Rule 21, the conduct of appeal hearings, who can speak with no special time for project applicants, and for how long, that's Rule 22, preventing members of the public from making a point of order, that's Rule 24, and the participation of the public in board meetings in Rules 45 through 47. These rules directly affect people's First Amendment rights to free speech and to seek redress of grievances from their government. There are controversial issues and confusing parts in the proposed new procedures. New Rule 1, as revised, would allow the board chairman acting alone to suspend any or all rules of procedure, regardless of the wishes of a majority of the board. As pointed out in the staff report and in the board procedures, one purpose of these rules is to put in one place the requirements of multiple state and constitutional provisions regarding free speech and the conduct of meetings. If one person can suspend these rules, what other rules would be applied in the interim to ensure that the requirements of state meeting laws and the Constitution are followed? Violations of the constitutional rights of individuals can subject the county to financial liability under the Federal Civil Rights Act. Is it wise to expose the county to that much liability for the rash act of a single individual? Ceding board decision-making responsibilities to one member of the board sets a dangerous precedent. State law gives power to a board of supervisors acting as a board, elected by people from each supervisor district, not to individual supervisors making discretionary decisions without the consent of a majority of the board. The people of Calaveras County elected a board of supervisors to act as a board. They elected a person to represent their district. They did not elect board members to surrender the interests of their district. Thank you.
I'm continuing on with the CPC opinion of what's going on here. If the board can cede these important powers to only one member, then what other powers could they cede? Let's see. If we are to maintain those freedoms of speech and self-government that are the cornerstones of our republic, then we cannot place in the hands of the person one power to snuff them out. As revised, Rule 3, as revised, would be amended to eliminate the quarterly evening meeting that provides students and working people their only opportunity to speak to the board in person and be heard. As revised, Rule 20, Rule 21, and Rule 22 would reduce the speaking time of an individual on an item from 5 to 3 minutes, even during appeal hearings. In Rule 22, no time is specifically allotted to the project proponent when its project approval is under appeal. I believe that some members of the development community may not be happy with that. New Rule 24 precludes a member of the public from making a point of order. This is content based on restriction of speech. It must be narrowly tailored to meet its purpose. It does not appear to be so narrowly tailored. Also, this may be highly prejudicial, since the party disadvantaged by a breach of the board procedures will often be a member of the public who is not getting to speak or who is personally attacked or slandered by another speaker. It seems odd that in Rule 25, as revised, a commitment to civility, the board is repealing the provision to have discussion during board meetings be free of personal attacks. Rule 26, as revised, allows individual members of the board to receive privileged communications via text or email during a public meeting. There is already a procedure for going to closed session for the entire board to receive confidential advice from county council. Allowing individual board members to seek and receive such advice electronically during a meeting could exclude their other members of the board from receiving the advice they need. It seems odd. While Rule 26, as revised, supports the submission of electronic documents to reduce document printing and distribution, Rule 46 requires the public to provide 28 copies of written documents to the board clerk. Rule 43 removes the requirement that a request for an unusual expenditure of staff time be first approved by the board by vote on an item on the agenda. My guess is that the Taxpayers Association may have some concerns with this. It seems odd that with regard to revised Rule 47, orderly conduct, the board is repealing the provision requiring members of the public speaking before the board to refrain from slanderous and profane remarks. Since 2006, the Planning Coalition has been promoting public participation in local government decisions that affect people's quality of life. Because the proposed board procedures could directly restrict...
Thank you.
Marty Crane, I was asked to finish that little paragraph. Because the proposed board procedures could directly restrict and indirectly chill constructive public participation and may adversely infringe upon the First Amendment rights of the people of Calaveras County to seek redress of grievances from their government, on behalf of the Calaveras Planning Coalition, I respectfully request that the new board procedures be circulated for public comment, publicly noticed in the newspaper of record, and discussed at a public hearing at a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors at a time and date certain, preferably at the quarterly evening meetings. Tom Infacino. I also wanted to share that I've seen us kick the can down the road many times. We alluded to it today, many, many times. So in the interest of kicking the can down the road, I would propose that this item, as well as the review of the calendar if you so wish, but especially this item, be put off until the October 30th night meeting. And you have plenty of time to reach out to the schools, plenty of time to put it in the paper, do a flyer. It's the thing to do. You can see that there are many, many questions and concerns about this. You've received some in the mail. You've heard some today. You'll be hearing more. And I think that it's important that you take all that, because we're just the ones that could make it today. There are many people out there who are going to be impacted by this. And another thing I was thinking, when I heard that we were keeping, Ms. Stepville, when you were saying that you were keeping a log of all the concerns that we might want to address, and that we should periodically change these things to keep it current, well, that means that Joe Public out here has no idea what's going to happen at the next meeting. No idea. I mean, it's just a constantly changing thing. So if we were to look at it, keep your list and look at it, say, every 6 months, that would be more reasonable than to just make the plan to, we're just going to keep revising this. When we find one thing, we're going to fix it. We're going to. That's too hard. It's like catching Jello. So thank you.
Christian Wilson, District 1. I'm going to start with a quick quotation from Richard Friedlander, and I have a prop. Back and forth the pendulum swings in public and personal life, never resting for long in one's spot. A good thing, too, because too much of anything is too much. We've seen what happens when the mob wields power. We've seen what happens when the one wields power. The Greek fabulist Aesop may have had the final word thousands of years ago. The frogs demanded a king, so they got a log. When they complained that the log did nothing, they got a stork, who ate all of the frogs. So, this pendulum here swings back and forth. The question is, where is the pendulum right now? Where is the pendulum of our republic? Is it here, Is it here? It's going to swing back. And are you going to give the powers that you're going to give today to your friends, but also to your enemies? Just think of how any power you give to somebody today that's your friend could be abused by your worst enemy, because the elections are always around the corner. We never know who's going to win, especially when the Russians might hack it.
I have something I'd like to give each of you. That there is the First Amendment. I think a couple of you need to read it. You sort of forgot the meaning of it. I'm not sure if I can read. So I want to remind you of an oath you took when you took your office. We were blessed at the taxpayers meeting the other day to have our sheriff have us all take it. And even though I don't have a political job, it went to my heart, and that's why I'm speaking here. Your oath at office states that you solemnly swore that you would support and defend the Constitution of our United States and the Constitution of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you will bear the faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the state of California, and that you would take this obligation freely without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will and faithfully, I can't read, discharge the duties upon which you were elected to take. I may be off on that bit because I can't read. What part of that did you forget? Apparently some of it. Gary, you're choosing to control this room with a hammer instead of respect. If you respected the people, whether you agree with them or not, they can respect you. But when you show disrespect and like, I have power, and so boom, you can't talk, that's a hammer. That's not respect. You need to show respect. Special meetings are important to everybody. They shouldn't, and I believe that was put on there that we would not be able to speak at those. It affects us. Anything that affects us is important to us, and we have the right to speak to it. You are, by your attitudes, some, not all, driving good people from this county. I won't go. I refuse. But there are so many, and there are long life people here that were here for generations that are leaving. Not because of the marijuana. They're fine with the legal guys, because those are good people, really good people. You should get to know them and meet them. They're damn good people, pardon my French. But they are being driven away by you. So you ought to hold some pride in that, I guess. If you vote for this today, then you're going down as an anti-constitutional. And I have 3 words for you: Boston Tea Party. Thank you.
Chris Jonkoltz, District 2. Gentlemen, this is our chamber, not yours. You're elected to these positions and you're filling the seats for the time being, but at the end of the day, those chairs belong to the people of the county, and the people of the county have the right to speak at these meetings and have their voices heard. We should all act with respect towards everybody, and admittedly, sometimes in the chamber we lose sight of that. We've seen rules put in place to enforce that, and many times those rules aren't followed. So before we add additional rules, I would suggest maybe we start enforcing the ones that exist and see if it might get us somewhere. And again, it goes back to the community in general. If we're all getting along, we don't have to have this type of draconian shutdown of our thoughts. We should be able to get up here and speak thoughtfully and openly about our concerns without denigrating each other. We shouldn't hear people from either side commenting negatively behind us. Everybody here should show respect for this chamber. But at the end of the day, gentlemen, this is our chamber, and you must let us speak. And I don't understand this unilateral attempt to make these changes. It must be discussed openly. We're back to the transparency issue. It seems like we go round and round on these things. And when we talk about respect, that doesn't indicate respect for the public when things are attempted to be done backhandedly or with less of public input. That's not what you guys should be after. And I think we all need to come together and figure out if there's a problem in this room, how we resolve it as a community. It's not up to you guys to solve that for us. We don't need parents. We need leaders, and we need people to help us to find our way rather than to tell us what it is. You're not going to get anybody to listen to you if you try to tell us what our way is. We're trying to tell you what we want, and we hope that you can take all of our inputs and form decisions that reflect what we all want as a community, not as individuals. It's very important that we're allowed to speak on each of these issues. This one in particular, if this rule had already been enacted, we wouldn't be having this discussion today about such an important subject. So really, this needs to be held in a more public forum. Circulate the rules if you want to make changes. Frankly, I don't see why at this point we're trying to do this, but let's do it openly and then let's get the discussion going. Thank you.
Once again, I agree. This is not something that should have been a special meeting or anything like that. I think the public has the right to know what's going on. If rules are being changed, they have a right to have the time and more than 72 hours to respond to that. Robert's rules are a pretty timeless set of rules. The man had enough time to come up with them too. But they're set for a pretty fair meeting. I've used them in past in meetings that I have been the chair of. And I don't see a problem. Now I can understand that you may need to make some adjustments. But some of the adjustments that are being made, as it's been stated, can also work against you. It can work for the public and it can work against the public. And by all means, gentlemen, we should all be on the same side. It should not be you guys against the public. But the public is kind of feeling like it is. Okay? I was not going to be here to speak today. But you know what? I took that oath to defend this country against all enemies, public, domestic, and foreign. And so I am here because you're walking a very thin line. It may work for you today, and it may work against you tomorrow. Think about it. What harm is it going to do to move that can down the road a little bit? To give the people, and especially the young people of this county, a chance to respond to their freedoms, their speech being taken away, possibly, from them. Have we not lost enough freedom in this country? Because it's being chipped away little by little. And if that's what this is going to do, I'm not for it, and I will do everything to stop it. You guys have a tough job. Take it seriously, please. A little bit of time, a few more meetings, is not going to ruin your position. If anything, perhaps the public will see maybe where those rules that you want changed maybe need to be changed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Given the already kind of harsh time limits the chair imposes on public comment, even at meetings that are minimally attended, there is really no way I can address even a significant portion of the changes made to 28 rules, not counting the table of contents in the amendment to the board's rules of procedure. These rules could have been amended to solicit more public input and less discretion to restrict it, but in large part the revision proposes the opposite. In the new number 47, the rule against public making personal, impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks to any member of the board, staff, or the general public has been deleted. And, you know, I recognize the First Amendment implications of that rule, and it probably needed to be deleted. But this goes from one extreme to the other, from infringing on our First Amendment rights to encouraging slander, profanity, and personal attacks. Is that really your intention? This is contrary to the supposed intention of number 25, the commitment to civility, as is the new rule number 23 on order and decorum, which changed from requiring board members to refrain from profanity, emotional outbursts, and personal attacks on one another, staff, and the public, to simply encouraging it. That's not a commitment to civility. There's no commitment involved there. It's just a toothless suggestion. And implementation of rules like number 24 that deprive the public of our right to raise points of order will likely result in less civility and decorum and lead to civil disobedience as the public's only remaining means of holding the board accountable to your own rules of procedure. This is really important to us. And everybody would benefit from a more conversational format, encouraging more dialogue and less competing monologues. Elegant solutions to challenges we all face are more likely to be found by broadening the scope of the conversation and the base of the participants. Ask us for ideas. We've got lots of them. And since there hasn't been sufficient opportunity for the public to become aware of these proposed changes, let alone digest their implications of what would happen under implementation, I too suggest tabling the item to afford the public an opportunity to inform ourselves and weigh in on how our business is conducted. Thank you very much.
Other public comments?
Good morning. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. Sometimes the Planning Coalition gets things right. Some of the points that they made do make sense. And one of the things that I'd recommend is have this in a workshop, go over it a little more thoroughly, and also get input from your board clerk. She probably could see some of the problems in this and be able to correct it in another draft. And so in looking back, one of the things that keeps repeating is the 5 minutes to 3 minutes. Well, sometime back, years ago, the 5 minutes was really too long, so the board chair at that time started a tradition of 3 minutes, which seemed to work okay. And so now that is institutionalized in the rules of procedure. But in each of those rules where we've reduced 5 minutes to 3 minutes, it's followed by it's at the discretion of the board to increase that to 5 minutes or reduce it to 1 minute, whatever. Quite often, the board chair looks for the number of people in the audience who wish to speak, and sometimes will adjust the amount of time allowed to allow more people to speak, and also encourage people not to repeat the same thing that a previous person did. But that's at the discretion of the board chair, and it's worked pretty good. Anyway, I'd recommend that this be done reviewed further with better input from the clerk of the board. Thank you.
Right down my alley, talking about freedom as compared to censorship, which is limitations and restrictions, suppression, oppression, and repression. Not just concerned about what's happening in these chambers, I'm also concerned about what's happening on the federal level of trying to stifle people's opinions, eliminate people's ability to have free speech. I have a couple of things I've thought about meetings that may or may not happen. I would suggest at the end of each meeting an announcement be made for when the next meeting is planned to occur, the time and the date of the next meeting. I'm concerned about the 3-minute limitation, and I've always railed against that because I felt it was an attempt to keep public comment to a minimum. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the best tool we have to determine what the public thinks and feels by what they say in the 3 or 5 minute time limitation that they have. I'm concerned about the new law regarding signs, that we wouldn't be able to bring our sign up to the podium when we're trying to make a point. I think that's a form of censorship and limitation and restriction. A few years ago, we had a gentleman who I nicknamed Mr. Rooster, and he had an issue that really grated on him. Night after night, he had to deal with it. He'd come here meeting after meeting to talk about the problem that he had. And one time he got really out of control, and he was spitting and flapping around and making all kinds of noises. And the way that it was handled was the chair, I think it was Marita at that time, said, we're going to take a time out so that we can gather ourselves. It gave Mr. Rooster the time to get himself under control, and the meeting was able to proceed with decorum and respect. I think when we're able to manage a meeting without a whole bunch of obstructions and restrictions, then we will have a true
Thank you, Bonnie.
view, a true view. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
I'm going to have to get one of those packets. It sounds pretty complicated to me. I'm afraid that when someone reads a word like profanity, someone might say, oh, that was profanity, or someone else might say that was a figure of speech. And when people may clarify what is profanity, then the person can not do what they're not supposed to do. But it sounds like these rules are pretty complicated, and I didn't know that you had to study to be able to come up here and talk. And it concerns me what's in it to begin with, but now the changes, and so I'm completely ignorant about it, but I'm concerned. I think each change should be brought toward another meeting at least and talked about, each item, so that people can make an informed decision, and then you guys can make your decision. Thanks.
Any other public comments?
Hello, Board. Trevor Whitkey. I agree with Patricia Gordo. I'm deeply concerned that these changes will be immediately implemented without appropriate public outreach and input. These proposed rules significantly restrict public participation and limit the public's ability to seek redress for their grievances from their elected representatives. What's more is that this is all being carried out in a special meeting in late August without prior notice in the paper of record. I understand that the notice was given 72 hours in advance as the rules for a regular meeting, and that is greater than what is required, but sometimes going over and above what is required is what is necessary, because instead of doing the bare minimum, you have to actually go out and explain these things to people and get buy-in from the community and from your constituents. Why are you smirking? Like, you should actually go to your constituents and hold meetings. And you should hold meetings in every district. Why? Because your constituents matter just as much as Clyde Clapp's constituents matter. And everybody should have an opportunity to engage their representative and actually have input on these rules. These rules are incredibly controversial. They've been changed twice, 3 times in the history since they've been adopted. That's 30 years. And I've been coming to board meetings for the last several years, and Bonnie Newman's been mentioning this every single meeting pretty much for the last 2-3 years. And that's since those rules were adopted, so I'm assuming she's probably been making these comments for about 5 years now. There's a long historical memory, and people are upset about these types of actions. They're upset about the fact that there appears to be a power grab. The changes to Rule 1, Rule 8, Rule 20, Rule 21, Rule 25, 45, 46, 47, 48 give the chair unilateral authority to run the meeting, suspend the rules, lengthen or shorten public comment. The chair can silence his critics and create lasting consolidated power that are antithetical to our system of local traditions of governance. The word chair appears in the proposed rule change and procedures handbook 76 times. That's a 24% increase over the number of references in the existing handbook. In each instance, the chair's authority and discretion has been increased with the public's input, and the checks on the chair's abuses and authority have been diminished. The chair is a unilateral executive. If the 4 of you are going to vote for these rule changes, you're voting for one unitary executive to dominate all deliberative processes, all meetings, and have the sole authority to decide who can speak, who can't speak, how long they can speak, and whether or not they can speak extra. These are ripe for abuse. And District 1, the chairman, should not be the person implementing these rules, given the history.
Just to follow up on that, District 1 has had the board chair for 3 of the last 4 years. District 2 has been passed over twice. We really needed strong leadership through D2 and really needed the chair, given the aftermath of the Butte fire. I'm deeply concerned about the point of order rule limiting the public's ability to call points of order. During the deliberation on the ban back in October, silent poison was brought forward. There's 20 minutes of new material, and if Marty Crane hadn't called a point of order, well, the board just would have run, or a member of the board would have run roughshod over the public. I think it's really important that this go, that you take more time on this. I'm adamantly opposed to you voting on this today. You need more input from the public. It seems like a power grab. We're in an election cycle, and I just do think that it's important that people follow the rules of the board. That does bring me to a thing about the election and the First Amendment. There were cases that were settled or decided in Maryland, and it is relevant to the federal situation with social media. If you have social media and you are campaigning through social media, you are not allowed to block people that disagree with you. You are not allowed to delete our comments. You are public figures. So I want you to not only consider the local rules, but national rules when it comes to dissent. We as the constituents, as your bosses, have the right to speak. If you want to limit those rights, then we will seek remedies in the courts. It brings me no joy to spend time in courts. It brings me no joy to sue the county. I love this place. I pay my taxes. I pay more taxes than the average person, certainly more than the average illegal grower. And I think that you need to hear us. Please consider all of the previous comments as well. Thank you.
Other public comments?
So I want to speak about 2014 when we changed the abstention issue. One of the reasons we did that is because there were so many abstentions going on. It was making it difficult, really, to get consensus or get a vote on the board. And one of the other issues that we talked about, and it was in a regular meeting and it was open in public. One of the issues was, the way I felt anyhow, is if you're sitting up there, your constituents have the right to have you make a decision on whatever the issue is, not abstain. But, you know, if a person wants to abstain and take the heat from their constituents, that's their business. As far as unruly meetings and things like that, and I guess you guys are feeling a little bit of pressure on that. You haven't felt the pressure yet. I guarantee you. I was there for 4 years. I felt way more pressure than I've seen you guys feel. And I was happy to take it because it was my job. As a board chair, you control the meetings. That's what you do. If you want to give, if it looks like the subject needs more time, or 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is, then that's board chair has a discretion to do that. And in the interest of time, and also if it's a real contentious meeting, then that's what you have to do. You have to give the people a right to speak. And you have to give the people a right to express themselves. You know, folks come here angry sometimes. And they're angry because they hear something. And when they're here, they may not understand it all. And then they have to be able to express that. Because if they don't, they're going to leave here angry. And they may anyhow, even after they find out. But at least they have at least they're afforded the opportunity to be able to learn about it and be able to express themselves. Take it away, and it will come back at you very strong.
Any other public comments?
When I first read the agenda thing, I thought, oh, that's an opportunity to go and say what kind of government I'd like to live under. And then I saw what was actually in, or some of what was in it. I didn't even read the whole thing. But I'm concerned particularly about the one that says we would actually have to come down here to get the exact content of what you want to decide on. Because your summary of it, whoever puts up that summary, may not reveal what's actually in it. And unless I can see it, and unless I have extra time to come down and get a copy of that within those 5 days, I don't have a chance of even representing myself. That's just one example of the direction it looks like this change would make is it seems like almost consistently it's in the direction of making it harder for people to participate fully. And I would like to see you examine every one of those in the light of what will make it easier for people to be good citizens, to actually participate and actually work with you. Because this is not just the content of what you're deciding. These are decisions about how we make decisions, how decisions get made here. And that affects everything that happens. So I also agree that this needs more conversation, more thought, because it's really important that we be able to communicate with you well instead of adversarially, which it slides into when people feel crunched.
Other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Bring it back to the board. Council, do you have any comments?
Sure. So There were a few questions that I'm happy to answer, and there are a few questions that I think Ms. Severud will be answering. And if we miss anything, certainly let us know and we can clarify. There were quite a few comments and questions about, or requests about what is the urgency for a special meeting. Under the Brown Act, there is nothing that requires an urgency for a matter to be placed on a special meeting. I think there might be some confusion as far as emergency meetings or urgency meetings, but for a special meeting, anything can be added to a special meeting under the Brown Act. As far as this item, certainly this is the first step and if the board wants to make these changes. I know there were some questions about public comment. This is an open public forum to allow for the public comment. If the board is not inclined to take action, you can certainly do a variety of things, such as directing staff to hold a separate study session where there's no action taken, but rather direction given. You could give direction to staff today as far as changes that you would like to be seen to this document, and we could modify those things and bring it back at a future board meeting for the board to take action on. There are a variety of things that the board could do. As far as a noticed public meeting, there were some reference to this being a noticed public meeting and publication of this. There's nothing under the Brown Act that requires, or the law that requires this to be a noticed public meeting. That is actually a statutory term of art. And so whenever you see items that are where publish is required or a public hearing is required, that is something that is a statutory requirement. So if it says yes, there is an actual statute that requires that action to be a public hearing. That is different from it being on the regular agenda where the public gets to come and speak. The Brown Act is a separate thing from public hearings and notice public hearings and publication requirements under statutes. There were some questions and concerns regarding Rule 1 as it relates to either the board or the board chair suspending any of these rules. And I just want to clarify that these are just the rules as it relates to governing the board meetings. If any of the rules of procedure for the board meetings are suspended, that does not in any way, shape, or form suspend the Constitution. It does not suspend any other state law that would apply. It would just be suspending that rule as it related to the governing of the meeting. This board doesn't have the authority or the jurisdiction to suspend those other laws. This is just suspending a specific rule. An example that is in the guides that I use as it relates to Brown Act and open public meeting laws, an example of suspending the laws or suspending rules would apply to something where not so much in context here, but for instance, if it's a private club and there's a rule that only a member be able to attend the meeting and a topic of interest is something that is beyond that, then the chair of that meeting can suspend that rule because that rule is only for their meetings. I know that example isn't applicable here since this is a public meeting anyway. But I wasn't prepared to come up with an example as far as that rule was concerned. But again, suspending the board rules and procedures is only for purposes of governing these meetings. As far as reducing the speaking limits from 5 to 3, staff just did that because that has been historic practice. But there is still chair discretion. I know there was a lot of questions about the inclusion of chair discretion, and it is the chair that ultimately runs the meetings. And so because it is the chair that runs meetings, it is generally the chair that has discretion on how to implement and to interpret the rules in the meeting that they are running. So that is why that addition was made. There was some questions about, also just to clarify, with having the chair have discretion from 5 to 3 minutes, the chair, as indicated, does have the authority or discretion to increase it depending on the circumstances. The change to 3 was purely based on past practice. Let's see. Oh, there was a question or a comment about that we shouldn't be changing this all the time, and I agree that's not what, and I apologize if that's what my question or my prior comments were taken as. That's not the intent. It's just that it's been a couple of years since they've been revisited, and so that's why this was being brought forward, was to revisit it again. Not that it would necessarily be revisited multiple times in a year, but at least once every few years, just to keep things current. And just to clarify, I don't have a log per se. I know that Marty had indicated in her comment about my log, and it's really just as we're up here and as issues come up in interpreting, and whether it be an issue from the public or an issue from the board, or if the board comes and talks to me or to Diane about how things are running or how things could be done more smoothly, or how things could be clarified so things won't be problematic. I try to take notes on my board rules and procedures, so when things start stacking up and it becomes a time where, okay, maybe we need to consider bringing this forward for discussion. I don't have a formal log. It's just my handwritten chicken scratch, just so you know, Marty. And there was a question about special meetings and that the public is not going to be able to speak. And I just want to clarify, the section that talks about special meeting agendas may require that the public not have an opportunity to speak. That is only on the general public comment section, and that is existing law. That's already that's already an option under the Brown Act. And that's found in Government Code 54956. And so I know that has been a question that has come to me before when we've held special meetings in the past, particularly if it's a special meeting where it's a contentious topic and we want to utilize all of the time that we can on the very specific topic that's on the agenda, not having 30 minutes or more on general public comment on topics that are not agendized. And in special meetings, under the Brown Act, it's not a requirement to have the general public comment period. And that's why I added that to the board rules, so that the board and the public knew that there may be a time when we hold a special meeting where the focus is on a very specific topic that is agendized, and that rather than opening it up to the general public comment, there may be a time that to at least allow for that to be an option. The public knows and that the board knows that is allowed under the Brown Act. Certainly that's not been past practice. We've always allowed for general public comment on all agendas and at all meetings. So unless there was a specific time, staff, that's why it was written in a discretionary may wording. That's certainly not the intention. It's just there to at least clarify what the government code allows for, so that it is something that can be utilized in the future if necessary. On Rule 46, or what's entitled Orderly Conduct, that was actually a change that I had proposed, as I'd previously indicated, about better dovetailing with the government code. And the way that it was previously worded, it still cited Government Code Section 54957.9, but if you read that section and read the language of the existing rules and procedures, they don't necessarily match. And so the purpose of the government code that this rule was originally included for was to deal with situations when there is disruptions to the point that government work cannot continue. An example of that, and we actually saw this down in San Joaquin County fairly recently, where union members were very upset and they came to the board meeting and they chained themselves together, where the board couldn't continue to operate, the board couldn't continue to speak and to hold business. And so that's really about that government code section. If you go to the core of that, it's to address those kinds of issues where there's disruptions that would require board chambers to be cleared. And what was interesting is I did take a note in the example that Ms. Newman brought up during her public comments about the rooster gentleman. That example is actually exactly on point, this government code section. And so generally you start with a progression. In that situation, the chair at the time gavelled and said, we'll take a 5-minute recess to try to de-escalate the situation. From that, if 5-minute recess still creates an environment that disrupts the ability to conduct business, the chair has the ability to clear the room. From there, if clearing the room doesn't work and then bringing people in one-on-one to allow for public comment, there's a progression from, rather than going from 0 to 60 immediately, it's bringing order to the meeting. And that's what that government code section was really intended for. And so I recommended that we go back to language that more dovetailed with that code section. And that was purely the only reason. That was based on my recommendation, because whenever I see things where the rules reference a code section, but it doesn't necessarily mean what the code section says, I think that it's important that at least I bring that to the board's attention, because the implementation of a rule that doesn't necessarily follow the statute that it was intended to be coinciding with, I think that it's important for the board and the public to know that, and that's why that change was recommended. As far as I did want to clarify the rules as we know it generally was that they were adopted in 2014. I know that there were some questions about public comment, public input. When these board rules were adopted, the board at that time did hold public outreach. So there was a lot of public input on the board rules at the time. They did hold study sessions. So the updated changes were not intended to be a global update. Certainly if the board wants to hold study sessions, that the direction can be that, and you can direct staff to hold study sessions either here or in whatever fashion you would like to see those in. The modification in 2015 as it related to abstention votes, my recollection, there were no study sessions during that time period. It was just the one modification. Points of order. I know that there were some questions or comments on that. Just so the board knows, with the points of order, that was something that was in my notes of things that have been an issue with board meetings. I did look at both Robert's rule and Rosenberg's rules of order. Both of those are widely used, and both of those require points of order to be coming from the dais, and that's why the language as proposed is the way that it is. I did reach out to my colleagues, and I asked my colleagues if anybody allows for points of order from public. And out of the 10 different jurisdictions that I got a response from. There were no jurisdictions that allowed points of order coming from the public. There were no jurisdictions that allowed points of order at all. If there was a point of order, it would be recognized by the chair, but there was no formal process for that point of order. So the language, the board, this is your process. If you would like for points of order to come from the public, if you would like a more clear-cut process as far as what that would look like, this would be the time for the board to discuss, to give direction if you would like modifications. Let's see. The other note that I had is there was comments about bringing this back for the night meeting on October 30th, and I would just note that the October 30th meeting was canceled back in January when we stopped the night meetings. So if the board wishes to hold a separate meeting on this topic, particularly at night, that would be something that we would just need direction on. Those were all of the, let me see, those were the notes that I took when I was listening. I hope that I addressed the questions that came up. If there are other questions that I missed, Diane, if you have any from your notes.
So I did take a couple of notes on things that I was unclear. First of all, I didn't really understand the comment about the summary agenda not including all of the content and that the public had to come here to get that documentation. It is staff's goal, although the Brown Act requires us to post the agenda 72 hours before the meeting. That is the minimum, and we do aim to post the agenda on the Wednesday before the meeting. That doesn't always happen, but we try to give that extra time. If there is something that you feel is unavailable to you, I'd like to talk with you about it and see if maybe we can kind of identify exactly what that is. Yeah, we can talk after the meeting if you would like. I'd be happy to discuss that with you and see if maybe there's something that I'm missing. The only other thing that I wanted to add was there was a comment about the public being required to provide 28 copies of documents. So the 28 copies is mentioned twice in the proposed board rules. The first time is mentioned, I'm not sure the rule number's on either, but the first time is mentioned as it's a direction that the clerk's office has given to staff, specifically regarding items or documents or PowerPoint presentations that are provided to the board in a board meeting, and that not only do we want those documents to be provided to the board, but we are required to provide them to the public. For anything that's provided during the meeting. The second time that it's mentioned in the proposed board rules is if the public is presenting any kind of documentation in a meeting. We'd like it to be that they're Rule 14 and Rule 45 respectively. And we'd like it to be that anything that's given to the board is made available to the public. But in that Rule 45, it does state that it's requested. Anytime that there is one document provided or just the amount for the board members on the dais, I do scan those documents and they're available after the meeting upon request. They are part of my meeting file. So the public is requested but not required. But at this point we have asked staff to provide documents for the dais and the public. And then specifically to PowerPoint presentations, we are working on guidelines for ways that we can make PowerPoint presentations more easily readable. I know sometimes there's a lot of information on the screen, and I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes I struggle to see what it is. So we are trying to work on that, but at this point, making those hard copies available to the public is an effort to make sure that everybody can see the information.
That being said, any board comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of comments. After hearing public comment and reviewing this in depth since Friday after I received it, I have a concern that I may be violating my oath of office. The perception of what has been presented on this agendized item by the public, and be quite honest, by me sometimes, it is a violation of the Constitution. And I feel it's a violation of my oath as a supervisor and the oaths I've taken in the performance of my life. I'm in total disagreement with what has been suggested here. There are certain issues that need to be addressed, and some of those issues are documented. But I think we've missed the big picture. You're right, ladies and gentlemen, rules of conduct in this board chambers are for the benefit of everybody. The board supervisors, the people, even the folks that may or may not be happy with how these things go. I'm very impressed with the idea of holding study sessions, giving the public a chance to chime in, if you will, on some of these changes. But more importantly, after listening to council, getting folks the education, and I use that word very loosely at this point, to understand why some of these changes are documented. And I agree, there are some changes that are required. But as this stands, I would not support this at all. I would look for the public comment on these and an understanding by all parties before we start setting stuff in stone. And once again, what's set in stone today doesn't last forever. It can be changed by a different board. So I would not be supporting this change at this time.
Supervisor Mills?
This board could easily adopt Rosenberg's rules or Robert's rules and throw all this out and go by the rules that a lot of other boards do. I personally attended board meetings with other counties and other organizations for a lot of years. I want to go back to Rule 20, and that has to do with public polling items on the consent. I definitely think we need to add in to our agenda the statement of encouraging the public to comment on consent calendar items. Somehow I think that gets missed in the conversation. So here's the full consent calendar that the public has, just to remind them that they have the ability to speak to any item as a public comment to the entire consent calendar. You've got it listed there, but I just
want to clarify, because what we have always done is allowed members of the public to pull items from the consent agenda. So, and then that's when they have the ability to speak during the public comment. There are other agencies, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear with what you're saying. There are agencies that and counties that don't allow the members of the public to pull items from the consent calendar, but rather during the general public comment period allow for them to speak on any and all items on the consent agenda during that period. So I just wanted to make sure, are you talking about speaking during general public comment?
Not even there. The general public comments that are allowed, the consent calendar is a separate public comment to any item that's on the consent calendar on many of these agencies and organizations and county boards, where what they are asking for the public to do is to work with their supervisor and to get those questions addressed and to help. And if the supervisor's concerned and has some problems, then he can take that, or she can take that matter up and pull it and bring it before the board for a full conversation. So it's just a matter of it's encouraging the public to work with their elected representative on a consent calendar, non-controversial item, to have those conversations, and maybe the questions could be answered very simply and not delve into a lot of extra time at a board meeting on these consent non-controversial items. Now again, because the consent calendar is listed here as a bulk, that the public should have a separate opportunity to have public comment to that bulk group of consent calendar items. So I'm just speaking to Rule 20 here and how it's laid out. And I don't want to create confusion, but I know definitely when I was on CCWD, and I've seen it at the Tuolumne County Board and the San Joaquin County Board, et cetera, that they encourage the public to come back to their elected representative and have those conversations on consent calendar items.
So could I'm sorry to just jump in. So if I'm understanding you right, we would announce, as we do now, we announce the consent calendar, and we say that the items are routine and expected to be routine and non-controversial. Are you saying that at that time there is a public comment section on just items that are on the consent? It's not necessarily pulling items, correct, it's just posing questions.
Correct.
So then, is that followed up by then the person can't make a comment when the item is pulled, or are they then able to speak again a second time on a specific item if it's pulled?
Where county supervisors in other counties have done it is if an item is pulled off the agenda, it's pulled right up front. Then the public's allowed to comment on all those other items that are not pulled from the consent calendar for discussion, and there will be public comment separate for that pulled item from the remaining portion of the consent calendar.
So forgive me.
That's quite all right.
So what we're saying is that we would announce the consent calendar, then items would be able to be pulled, then there would be an opportunity for public comment on the remaining items on consent, and then any pulled items would have an individual public comment portion.
You are correct.
Got it, thank you.
You are correct. And believe me, that does speed up their processes. And again, if the public can work with their elected official on many of these issues, a lot of them can get resolved, or they may open a whole new discussion that might not normally be available within the confines of a board meeting. So I would like to have that thought brought out, that it is important. The other thing is that on points of order, I can't think of another entity that allows the public to make points of order. It's true. It comes from here. And what we're looking at is, for instance, if someone does make a motion, it's on the table, you can't make another motion, and so there's a point of order saying we can't do this until we do that kind of thing. So I think Rule 24 is correct. Somebody made a comment about, and brought this up about the First Amendment. There was a study done here recently in Fresno with 1,000 people, and 54% could only name one of the freedoms. Only one. That meant 46% of the people questioned couldn't name a single one, and yet they're probably voters. Also, it's understandable that the public needs to speak to all of these items. I would like to find a way that we could get some ADA compliance done within the chambers. And by that I mean that we've got a space right inside the door to the left and to the right. If those could be somehow marked or reserved for folks that have difficulty getting in and out of our chairs. I can't think of any other place to do it. Whether that has to be part of our rules or not, it's just simply a request. Also, I think that the video in the lobby we need to get people that are in the lobby, if they're going to participate in these activities at this board meeting, we need to get them in here. And if this isn't a full location, then that video screen out there needs to be shut down. And bring people directly into the activity that are within these chambers. I'm seeing that area, and I've had comments from my constituents that they feel uncomfortable in walking through that lobby area, and I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable in entering or exiting this building. Finally, I think that it's understandable that people can create negative comments about their elected officials. That's part of what we do. You expect it. But you have to understand that if you're talking about an unelected individual who may not be in the room and can defend themselves, and you're creating a liability for yourself. You need to be careful. Now, Socrates said something that I remind myself of constantly when people are talking. When a debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. I'd almost like to post that right up here somewhere. Because slander doesn't get anywhere. That's a closing of the conversation. The person that's doing that has no desire to have a conversation anymore. And this should be an opportunity for people to bring forth ideas, to present their views, and to create a situation where there is going to be a two-way discussion back and forth. Now, I know that there's probably only one person in District 4 sitting in this room right now. It's because I talk to my constituents. They are regularly involved in my phone. My phone blows up constantly. But it should be that way. We should be available to our public, and I think that in my case, I'm doing the best I can with that. So in these rules that are here now and the way that they've been rewritten, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to go through all of this. I think it helps to clean things up and realize that if you can't get 3 of us to sit here at this dais, there is no meeting. I'm constantly reminded when I go to other venues, and I was just at the state capitol yesterday, and I heard it again. Don't be like Calaveras when it comes to conducting meetings. We have a reputation, and we have a reputation now statewide. So it is up to all of us, in essence, to clean up our act when it comes to public discourse. It is all of our responsibilities. It isn't just the responsibilities of the public or the people here at the dais. But if you can't speak openly and freely to your elected official, that's a lost cause. So I thank Megan and her staff and Chair for the work that you've done on this, and I would fully support taking it forward.
Supervisor Garamendi, your light's on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have lots of thoughts on this, lots of rebuttals to what's been going on here, and if need be, we can go through this line by line and talk them through. And I agree that there are some changes that we need to make, but I don't think we can make any of them because public doesn't trust us. We don't trust each other. Rules, agreements have to be based upon some sort of trust. And so everybody here, from the public to those of us sitting up here, think there's some sort of game getting played. And it's hard for me to say that's not. I'll speak for myself. I think that is the case. I think that we ought to suspend this. I don't think we should take any action. I think we ought to take a step back. I think we ought to re-earn the trust of our community and the trust of our fellow board members, and then approach this at a later date. Because I think that otherwise this will be suspect and will be a stain.
Supervisor Clapp, do you have any comments? Okay, I have some comments. First off, since February of this year, I have been on this man right here to put cases up in this chambers on either side of the door, posting all the rules governing this board. So they're in the open, where anybody can stand there and look at them and read them and know what we're governed by. They're still not there. I've talked to Megan since February about, also, she was against posting these rules in this chambers right there for all to see, because there needed to be some changes made to them. They were due for some changes. And one of them, she mentioned Rule 46. It was mentioned that I was involved in this. I was involved very, very little in any of this. Rule number 1, I did not tell anybody to insert the chair. That's not my comment. The only comments I had to do was, my comments were about points of order, and having those looked at and what other jurisdictions do, and if that's the case, what is it that they do to accomplish any of that, because it was getting out of control. I've heard from both sides over the course of this year that I need to control this. I need to control it. Not even this side, the other side, both sides. When they don't like something, it's yelled at for the chair to control the meeting. And no matter if I can control on that side, then I'm not controlling that side. They don't like that. They don't like this. So I asked for county council to go through these and make any updates that she deemed that need to be made, so I can get them posted up there in these chambers for all of the public to see. And there's no question. And if we allow points of order to go from the public, it's up to this board. It's not my choice. I'm not grabbing any power here, and there was no power grab here. It's trying to do what the public asked me to do, try and run this and control it the way that it needs to be controlled, and get these up there. There was no power grab whatsoever, only trying to control this. And again, asking county council with the help of the clerk, and they went back and forth on getting this on the changes they said needed to be made so we can get them posted. I need to get those posted. I think this board needs to get those posted in order to conduct our meetings, because we are here, this board is here and convened to conduct county business. That's why we're here, so the county can function. It's been very contentious over the course of this year, not only in the elephant in the room, but other items that seems to come up. Everybody has a comment, and that's fine. I've never shut down public comment. I've been accused of letting people rag on other people out there. I've allowed a lot of public comments and gone overboard. So the thing about power grab and trying to control the meeting, I could hammer down many people over the course of this time, and I haven't. And I've taken criticism from staff for doing it. But I think you have the right during your public comment period to say your piece of mind. You can't do that at any state level. Those are not open to the public. At any Congress or other levels in federal government, that's not open to the public. Your ear and your voice is heard here at local government level, and the Brown Act governs that. Consent agenda items. The other thing before I go into consent agenda items, I want to tell you that it was I that told the clerk and county council to put any and all changes in red. That was my decision, so you, the public, and the board member could visibly see any of the changes that were being made. It was there out in the open, transparent, so nobody could say it's being hidden. We don't know what the changes are because it was all going to be in black and some bold and some underlined. I said, no, make it all in red. So that way it's very easy for anything to see that any changes, it would stand out. That was done. That's some of the input that I had on this. There was no power grab of any type. I don't care if the chair is in number one or not. It doesn't, I didn't ask to put that in there. A consent agenda. It was brought up here, and it is correct, because I did homework on mine, on some of this on my own. Consent agenda items, most jurisdictions in California, public cannot pull a consent agenda item. That's not in here. That's allowed in there still. Points of order, again, most jurisdictions in the state of California do not allow the public to stand up and yell point of order. And I've sat in this meeting where we had very difficult times. Point of order was yelled every other sentence, and it got out of control. And that's why almost every jurisdiction in the state of California does not allow point of order by the public. It is by staff or by a board member concerning an item that may be taken out of line, out of order, or one of the rules being violated, and asking for a point of order. And again, in every jurisdiction, and it's in these rules here, the chair has a right to decide whether he's going to accept the point of order or not. That is part of running the meeting as a chair. As far as opening up the public, any of these things, not accepting them, I don't care. I'll vote for some of the changes because I believe in some of the changes, but my intent and my sole intent since February, bringing this to the board because I was told we need changes, is to get them up there in glass cases so they're in the boardrooms and they're available for view for everybody, because they're not available for view for everybody at this point right now. They should be there, and they should be in large enough print for people to be able to see them and not squint at them. That's my intent, and that's my intent this whole time since February to get to here, is to have it up there. And at one point I even had told Tim, I don't care if we put anything in or not, get the glass cases up there so people can see we're moving along and trying to get along. So this has nothing to do with Power Grab. I didn't have a lot to do with all these changes. County Council went through them. It was her that did a lot of the updates. I did not sit with her in her office and go over every one of these points. That's not the case. A lot of them changes I didn't even see until it came to us Friday in the board packet. But when she says I did institute bringing this forward, I did. I've been trying to get it forward since February because I've been told that we need to make some changes to them and bring them and update them. So that's as far as me having input and bringing it to the board. That was it. So that being said, I'm open for a motion on anything or going through each one of them or moving it on. I don't care. I just want to post it. That's my intent.
Mr. Chair, I move we table this issue until we have the opportunity for the public to chime in on any changes documented on this draft rules of order. And I would like to see that completed and brought back to the board before the end of the year.
Chair, I second that motion.
Any further comment? Supervisor Mills, your light was on, you don't.
I just want to make sure that I understand as far as your motion is concerned, what are you looking as far as public input? Generally, it's during open public sessions. Are you wanting to see study sessions here in front of the board? Are you wanting to, how would you like for the public to input, have an opportunity to have input on these?
An agendized item with public notice. It could be a night meeting to get the opportunity for all folks to attend and provide their input before the board to review any changes to the rules. Is that clear?
Sure.
Thank you, Council.
So you're suggesting that in your motion that we have a night meeting. This was agendized and it was open to the public, this meeting, and there was 72-hour notice on it. So I'm not sure what you're asking on top of that, other than you want to bring it to a night meeting for public comment.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And please be aware, this is not a reflection on your position as board chair, but I feel that the public needs to be fully aware and given the opportunity to speak on this matter, other than what we've done here in the last 72 hours, with the 72-hour notice.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Supervisor Garamendi?
Supervisor Oliveira, in your motion you said by the end of the year, do you want to have a timeline stipulation, or you want to leave it so that as future meetings might open up, that, or it's your decision? I just want to make sure I'm saying.
I would like to see this implemented by the end of the year for the new year coming up in January. Mr. Lutz, is that doable? Madam Clerk?
Well, I was going to say, I look over at council and clerk. I mean, certainly we can, by the end of the year, yeah, that gives us quite a bit of time. If the intent of the board is to hold night meetings, do more input, that could easily be brought back by the end of the year for sure.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
So I was just going to weigh in and say, if you'd like, we could probably do a press release that says that the board rules are going to be discussed at whatever the meeting date is. My question, though, is what kind of item is it that you would like to come back from the board? Would the item be the item from today as it is? Did you want to see something different? Who would be working on that?
I want to see the item of today presented.
Okay.
For the opportunity for the public to have input on that, and given time for the board to study that information by the end of the year so the board can act on it going into 2019.
So nothing additional than what was provided today in the item?
Well, that depends on public input.
Well, okay, so I guess that's the part I'm not understanding. I understand about requesting the public input. Did you want, and I'm just throwing this out there because I'm really not sure, because that's not really my role, but were you wanting to say that there would be, public should provide comments by X amount of date or time, and that would be included in the, their comments would be included maybe as attachments? I just want to see about how this item is drafted to come back to you to make sure that we're meeting the request.
This item was drafted from the previous rules of January 28th, 2014.
No, it was not. It was drafted from the rules that were adopted in June 2015, which were an incorporation of the January 2014
regarding
and that one
issue,
addition
regarding the sustaining vote.
Abstaining, yes.
But that was issued off of the 2014 revision. Is that correct, Council?
Yes. The changes are based on the current board rules and procedures, which were originally adopted January 28th, 2014, and there was a minor modification on June 30th, 2015 as it relates to abstention voting, and I believe that was the only change.
Okay. For purposes of clarity, I would like to see the motion involves the opportunity to have an open public Board of Supervisor meeting to discuss the changes documented in this draft that we're looking at today. Is that clear?
So I am understanding that to say that this item, as it is has been presented today, will come forward at another meeting, preferably a night meeting, for more discussion.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Garamendi, you like
you get that?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Supervisor. I was actually going to submit a substitute motion of much simpler form and just make a motion to not adopt.
Well, we have a motion on the floor.
Right, this would be a substitute motion.
You could table.
But we could obviously table it. You're correct, Madam Clerk. I don't know, I could go along with where you're going, Mike. You still have my second, but if you want to entertain clear the table and bring it back another day.
Council, I have a question. Would it be easier if we voted on this agendized item and then bring a new motion, or to table this item?
For purposes of the computer system, if the intention is just bringing this item forward for further discussion, the board may want to consider tabling this item and directing it to be placed on a specific date certain meeting. And then if any questions or comments as it relates to this item come in to the board clerk, staff can be compiling those things and provide an update at that date if necessary. I assume it will be necessary, but provide that input at that date.
I would amend my motion to reflect that.
Can I make a suggestion here first?
Sure.
Can we just table it and ask it to come back at a future date in a study session and have a presentation, a study session, and then open it up to public comment as it's actually gone through in a study session? I think it might be more prevalent to do that so it can be understood as we go through it.
Mr. Chair, I would entertain that, but I have a concern about getting this done by the end of the year.
That's why I want to bring it back in study session relatively soon.
Mr. Lutz, Madam Clerk, can that happen if we have a study session?
So my comment
I want to
would
make
be-
sure that we're perfectly clear
I
that we need to
understand
decide
that.
this issue by the end of the year.
That's what I'm looking at. So if you agendize this item as a study session, the board will not be able to take any action that day.
Correct.
So then you would have, let's just say for grins and giggles, you would have this come back at a 5th Tuesday night meeting on October 30th for a study session, and then it would have to come back to the board at a subsequent meeting, which would then allow for more public comment and possible changes, if it's discussed again, at another date. That's just how I'm seeing that roll.
And I'm suggesting that it not be on a night meeting, and we bring it back at a regular board meeting as a study session to open up and maybe even open it up on the website for comments to be taken. Is that possible?
I don't see that not being possible. However, I think you would need to give direction to staff as to who is putting it. Is it going onto the Board of Supervisors website? Is it being crafted by county council? Who is compiling the comments? I think it goes into a whole nother level.
Once again, my concern is allowing the opportunity for the public to chime in and give us their views on this issue. We just had public comment, and probably 80% mentioned that the night meeting did not afford everybody the opportunity to do that. I want to make sure that the public has the opportunity to chime in on how they're going to run these meetings. And that's why I'm pushing for a night meeting. Now, is there a problem that I'm missing on this?
Supervisor Mills.
I think we're missing the point. This isn't the public's meeting. This is a meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This is how we conduct, wait a minute. This is how we conduct our business, the business that's required of this county. So we're not here, we have to decide how we're going to operate as a board. And future boards then would take from that. That's what this is all about. That's what Robert's Rules or Rosenberg's Rules is all about. So I'm baffled as to why we're spending all this time on this.
Supervisor Clapp, anything? No? All right, so we have your motion on the floor. We have a second. Are you clear?
No. So what I have is that I have a motion by Supervisor Oliveira and a second by Supervisor Garamendi to table the issue until the public can weigh in before the end of the year at a night meeting. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct.
Okay. That's why I ask.
We need to have the ability to have the public voice their opinions on this item to be voted on and implemented by the end of the year for the new board, if there is a new board. Is that clear? Mr. Chair, is that clear?
your motion.
I just made it.
Still have a second?
I want to hear what the clerk heard.
So what the clerk heard was Supervisor Oliveira made a motion that the public voice their opinion and implement this by the end of the year.
The Board of Supervisors implement this.
Well, yeah.
Clarification.
That- I don't think
Bring it
that-
forward to a vote. We're not
Bring it to a
Yeah,
vote,
okay.
yes. Yeah, bring it to a vote.
Or agendize it again.
Yeah, I
Can
can't.
I get further clarification on the motion as it relates to getting the public voice their opinion? I assume that that is before this night meeting. So what, I'm sorry?
Or any meeting.
Or any meeting. So I want to clarify how the public is to voice their opinion and we solicit comments, just so we know what this board is wanting staff to do, and that we can make sure that the public fully understands where to send their comments and what staff is supposed to do bringing those forward.
Council, I would like to have that information presented through public comment on the agendized item at the night meeting. I don't believe we have time to have individual input to be considered by staff prior to that. I would love to have that, but unfortunately, to meet our end-of-the-year timeline for the board to decide on this issue, I believe it should be made a public comment during that scheduled meeting. Is that clear?
So Supervisor Oliveira, if you wanted, for example, you wanted the public to provide their input in writing or by speaking with staff by a certain date, and this item comes forward exactly as presented today, there isn't any reason that staff, I wouldn't think, there isn't any reason that staff couldn't compile those comments and present them during the meeting.
Mr. Lutz, do you want to volunteer our resources to do that?
Well, I would assume if we're collecting public input, there's got to be some way to summarize and
Right.
pull everything together. So someone would have to be doing that anyway.
I'm a
There would
firm
be a
believer.
resource commitment to doing that.
I'm a firm believer in your constituents contacting your individual supervisors and providing that information, and then also showing up there and voicing your opinion on that meeting. Am I wrong there?
So just so I'm clear, when you say the public voice their opinion, that means for the members of the public to contact each individual supervisor or their respective supervisor to give the input rather than sending the comments to staff. And
If
then,
you have the resources to do that, that would be fine. The bottom line is, we are responsible to our constituents, and we need to pay attention to them. If you want to do both, I have no problem with that. But I want to make sure that we can get this accomplished and get it before this board for a vote, so we can go into 2019 with a good set of rules.
So Supervisor Oliveira, as the clerk of the board, I would be happy to compile that information
Okay.
and provide a summary at the board meeting addressing rule number 1 had these comments, rule number 2 had these comments. And then you could also entertain public comment during the meeting, and the board could make their, you have to, but, then you wouldn't be starting from ground zero, possibly.
As long as that can happen, I'd be in favor of that.
So what I would recommend is that a press release be issued stating that the board rules are going to be discussed at date certain meeting, and that written comments can be submitted up until, and we provide a date to the clerk of the board.
I can do that. I would agree with that.
Okay, so then I would just ask that we pick a date certain.
All right. And you can
And
word that
table this item.
And you can word that anywhere you'd like to be clear, Madam Clerk.
We're talking about October 30th.
We're considering a night meeting, that would fall into the prior parameters of the 5th Tuesday.
And right now, we don't have a regular agenda I mean, a regular meeting scheduled for the 30th. In January, we did away with those. So again, we had comments from the public today complaining that it was a special meeting that we had this at. It was special, and we shouldn't have been having this. It should have been on a regular meeting agenda. Going to the 30th would again make it a special meeting, and we're not engulfed by those rules of 72 hours, although we did this for this meeting. It becomes, again, a special meeting. Is that correct?
Any meeting that is not otherwise adopted as a regular meeting for the board is in fact a special meeting, yes. So as far as the title of the meeting, yes, it's a special meeting, but because this is being moved forward, I think, at least I may be off base here, but the concern was that with special meetings, notice is only required as far as posting the agenda. The agenda only has to be posted 24 hours in advance. Considering the item itself is not going to be changed, it's going to be moved forward to this date. There may not be as much of a concern, but that's up to the board.
Well, council, Madam Clerk and Mr. Chairman, is there a possibility of changing one of our regular scheduled meetings to a night meeting?
We can certainly bring an item forward to change the calendar again.
Okay. I think that would suffice any concerns we have. Boy, I'm not going to get a Christmas card this year, am I, Diane?
So select the date.
We don't have to change the calendar. We set the meeting time every
Yeah,
time.
we just reset the date. I mean, the time.
Yeah, we can reset the time, and we get out a regular, and I would like to do it before October 30th. I had a problem with that because of how late that is. It only leaves us, as we changed our calendar, only 4 meetings to go forward past that.
Mhm.
So I would like to see it in the latter part of September come in a regular board meeting.
That's agreeable with me.
Okay. If we're going to do this. I have whispering going on. He doesn't want to pay for lunch.
So we're trying to figure out if there is a meeting that at this point isn't laden with other things.
The 25th of September is already out on IQMT?
No, it's still available. However, that is when final budget comes back for adoption. It's up to you if you want to change that.
That's just a procedural, though, to bring it back. We'll start on September 11th. Is that?
That's correct. The hearings would be starting September 11th.
So it would just be the final coming back for us to approve after we do the adjustments from the 11th. So I don't see that taking a great amount of time. The 11th is going to be the big one, taking up the time. So.
Not that it really weighs on the decision. I will not be here on September 25th. Someone else will be sitting in my place.
I just wanted to remind the board with special meetings do not have to be held on a Tuesday. They do not have to be, so arguably, as long as you give the public ample time so they know they have an opportunity to submit comments, all of those things, we might be able to consider a day other than Tuesday. We could consider a night meeting. A special meeting can be set at any time during the week, at any time that is stated on the agenda.
I would be open to that.
What about September 26th? That would give...
I won't be here.
Oh.
I'm leaving the morning of the 26th through October 4th.
What about September 19th or 20th? That's a Wednesday or a Thursday?
I'm good for those dates.
I'm not, I have board meetings.
Oh,
You have
no, I'm not.
that night?
Oh, or
Even on the
Sarah's.
20th?
I'd have to look
Oh.
at my calendar, but remember, I've got a lot, we've got.
Okay. What about, I'm hesitant to suggest any date earlier in September than that week of the 17th, only because of the fact that if we're going to put a notice in the paper, we need to, I think I can get it, if I get it to the newspaper by tomorrow, then it could go on, it can go in Friday's edition. I'd really like, I would think, to see the board have as much time, 30 days, for people to submit comments, unless you want to do less. So that's, what about, oh, you're not going to be.
Why don't we have something on the floor, let's vote on it, it might not even
Yeah,
pass. so
we
we're fine.
may be spending time, I was just going to make that statement. Let's see if we have a passage of bringing it back.
Okay.
I have a motion by Supervisor Olivera, second by Supervisor Garamendi. Call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. No has it 3-2.
Thanks, guys. Start over.
With that motion being voted against, would another motion be in order, Chair?
Yeah.
I would move that if there is additional public comment needed, or that they certainly can address their individual supervisors with those concerns, but that we take this matter forward, and if there's need to make adjustments in adopting, I would move that we bring this forward to the next available meeting that's open date. If there's adjustments needed, we'll make them at that time and get it on the calendar. And what I would like to include that we direct staff to get those cases up.
Yes. And I would be in favor of bringing it forward at the next available open date. And that'll give public comment time to comment, and they can email their supervisors, or they can email, Diane gets all kinds of emails all the time. And we can have public comment, and it gives them the ability for the next whatever weeks it is to voice their concerns to their individual supervisors.
So
I would be in favor of that.
The next available meeting is September 18th.
That's fine. I'm calling for a second.
Supervisor Clapp.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second.
So just to be clear, the motion is that the public would address their comments to their supervisors and/or the clerk if that happened, and the item would be brought back at the next available board meeting, which at this point I think is going to be September 18th.
Okay.
That's correct.
And if I could get clarity, then does the board want the blank cases up on the wall at this point?
I'm directing staff in my motion to put the blank cases
That's
on
why
the
I
wall.
wanted to double check that I
Yes, sir.
understood that. Okay.
Yes.
Supervisor Garamendi, your lights on?
A discussion, the motion is second, so there's discussion. I really prefer that we use our wall space for things like art, which used to exist in this room, rather than rules that are going to be behind everybody's heads. Maybe and that goes for the front hallway as well. I assume that on the 18th, things like removing the chair out of the item, rule number 1, is where we're going to go through this in fine-grained detail?
That's fine. That's what I had at red line intended to do, and I made the comment to both county council and county clerk, we'd go through each item.
And what funds are we going to use to pay for the glass cases?
How much you need?
How much do you need?
The cases are already here, so I mean, I think that's kind of an irrelevant statement, and I can't...
Well, it's a question, not a statement.
Oh, okay. How much were the cases then?
Thank
I'd have
you.
to go back and look. They were probably $50 a piece, give or take.
Supervisor Clapp, your lights on? You have any comments? Supervisor Oliveira, any comments?
No comments.
All right, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1. All right, moving on to...
That was our last item,
That was our
Chair.
last item. So, special meeting, we stand adjourned.
I like to pull the board.
Okay.
And
Are we not adjourned?
Are we not
No,
adjourned?
He wants to pull the board, he caught it in before I adjourned.
yeah, anyway, our CEO Lutz has been with us for a year now, and so I like to pull the board if we have a valuation on this stuff, since that was
Okay.
part.
Employee evaluation has been here over a year. I think part of the contract was at the end of the year that we would do an employee evaluation, so I'll pull the board. Supervisor Clapp,
Yes.
Supervisor Mills,
Absolutely, yes.
Supervisor Olivera.
I have a question before I answer. Is this considered a personnel matter, council?
It is, you would not be speaking, I mean, this is a performance evaluation. This is just whether you want staff to start working on a performance evaluation that would ultimately be in closed session.
All right, but
Performance
we're on legal
evaluation-
ground on the poll. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Good question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on legal
Supervisor
ground.
Garamendi.
Yes, I have a poll too, since the meeting didn't close.
Okay, hold on. And I'm in favor of that, so let's put it on.
I'm sorry, was that 5-0?
Yeah, it
I
was
didn't
5-0.
catch
5-0.
Supervisor Olive. Thank you.
Okay.
My turn?
Right, yep.
Thank you. I want to poll the board. I have concerns about, are we circulating public notices adequately throughout the county? I have this is an issue we've faced before in this county. Gary, when you were pro tem of the grand jury, you wrote a report saying that we needed to make sure that we had adequate community input and circulation. I know that we just passed a 30-day review notice for extending the Valley Springs News, and so I'm not seeking to breach any contracts here. But what I do want to take a look at is really, are we adequately communicating throughout our county through just using the Valley Springs News? So I would like to seek input from the board as to whether, I would like to seek approval from the board to direct staff to, over the next 30 days, take a look at, are we adequately circulating notices? And when this came up, I took a look at the contract that existed, so that I knew where we at. But there's some real holes in it, and I want to make sure we're covering all those holes. So if the board, I want to see whether the board is willing to take a look and making sure we're communicating, because there are a lot of places that in the initial contract were not covered by the Valley Springs News, specifically in my district, in District 3, and in your district, Dennis, and I want to make sure that those things have been covered and that people get adequate notification.
So you're asking,
I'm asking to direct staff to come back to us in 30 days with a report on whether we're adequately covering the county with legal notices and announcements.
and the reason for that?
The reason is because if we're inadequate, we would want to make it adequate.
I have a question on that. We have a contract in place, and what would that do in reopening up that contract?
I just want to caution the board from getting into substantive discussion about the contract, about noticing, about anything like that, because it's not on the agenda today.
Yeah.
So if the board wants to have the discussion about that, you could certainly either direct me to provide a legal memo as it relates to contract, or direct staff to make a presentation on what Jack is polling the board, or excuse me, Supervisor Garamendi is polling the board on today.
That's correct. I'm not talking, I just want to make sure that we're covering the county adequately.
Supervisor Clapp.
Well, from my understanding, we're just having staff now bring back what was on the agenda today, so we just loaded their plate again. Now we want to load it again and have everything come back in 30 days. There's a certain limit on it. I don't mind doing it for like next year or something like that, but I'm not for forcing the staff to bring something back in the next 30 days. That's what we just did.
Mr. Chair, I know that we're polling, and I hate to go in mid-vote, but We just listened to 2 hours of testimony about needing to be transparent and communicating with people. So in many ways, this is germane to where we're at.
Supervisor Mills.
Without fear in getting into an off-agenda item discussion, somebody can come approach me privately about it, but my answer is no.
Supervisor
I'm
Oliver.
very concerned about discussing contracts without being agendized. I do have some questions of Mr. Lutz, which I will do privately, but I'll be abstaining from the poll until I get that answer, and I cannot discuss it open forum.
And I'm a no at this point until I have some questions answered. Okay, that's it. We stand adjourned.
So remember when Supervisor Mills, we're adjourned, when Supervisor Mills said that about the TV out there, and he made a comment about, suddenly